Well, I'm all charged up and ready to go. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland, the Sunset Bob. And that was a nice little live chat we had about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago. And here it is about, what time is it? Not quite 10 o'clock. Okay. Mine is still young. So it's interesting to try to understand what's going on in the world. Right? What do you think? What's your take on it? What do you feel about it? Yeah, it truly is. Looks like Mr. Global only wants to have a nuclear war. I don't know if anyone's. I mean, all the governments and stuff are talking strangely, like, "Oh, we're ready for it. Hey, yeah, let's have a nuclear war." In Ukraine, the strongest thing would be to speak of peace rather than let's give them tanks. Um, and again, um, the the demographics and the world position is, everyone says, oh, it's going to be the century for China. No, China is not in a position um, economically, demographically. Um, where did 19 come from? And who in China? I mean, if it came from Wuhan, from that laboratory, and it escaped, um, who in their right mind let that happen? Right? I saw some videos of that laboratory, and my refrigerator in the man cave looks more competent than the ones they had holding super deadly viruses. And I have a bungee cord keeping my refrigerator closed. Um, we live on a planet of abundance, and we are being pushed into scarcity and starvation. Um, and we have been for the last million years. I mean, there is no reason for this to be. And we have a great opportunity right now, um, where, you know, if the world's population were to say, hey, let's try to be a, loving, kind, compassionate, empathetic species. It'll be interesting to see what happens. This last week, I had a very enjoyable week in Asheville with my friends, and they are very generous and hospitable. And my friend is a great cook, so every meal was truly yummy, and they're very health conscious. So I wasn't eating hot dogs, and they are great hosts. So um, we had lots of different people I knew and I didn't know, and it was interesting conversations about the stuff they were doing, and they were doing interesting things, more than I'm doing, I mean, but I do have to say, what I do is a service to love's co-creation. So it doesn't reflect on career motif. So talking about all of that, like what's going on in the world and what do you think? Let's give our buddy here um, a buzz. This is a person I enjoy talking to because he has such a staunch belief structure, right? And he just reiterates like Scott Ritter's motif, right? That's what I call it, the Scott Ritter motif. And there he is. Let's see if he answers. Doo, 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 doo.
Hello?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, man.
What's shaking?
Well, let me say goodbye to this phone call here.
Okay, say goodbye to the phone call.
So what you know?
Oh, I've been on the Bop. I was in Asheville for a week, and that was nice. It was.
How come you went on the Bop?
Oh, I just got tired of being in the deep green.
Okay.
I wanted to change the location and see people and interact with people who are, instead of just trying to get over and be a tweaker. I wanted to hang with people who are more
a change up.
Yeah, a little positively motivated. And they're old friends, people I've known 40 years,
Right, I see.
and that I've done pretty amazing things with, and they're still doing amazing things. I went to my friend's opening, his photo opening, and it was truly amazing. That's really I've known him. We're both photographers, but he's stuck to it. One thing about me, I have many skill sets, so I've done lots of different things, and to be oh successful at a career, you pretty much have to have one thing and stick at it and do it well and keep doing it well, right? And so these folks have, they're published people. They've run large, corporations and been involved in, one of my friends was a, editor of Art in America. Another was on the board of the National Endowments and things of that nature. But that's because that's what they do. That's what they did for 50 years. That was nice to meet up with them and see all the things they've done. And now that they're kind of retired, all the things they're doing now, and they're doing pretty much the same thing, but in a much more interesting way. Meaning, instead of just being that editor, they're either curating shows that have a cultural interesting. I mean, they're not just about the stuff that's being sold in America, but stuff that's being made around the world by interesting people. They may not be the big sellers in the art galleries, but they are really interesting works. So stuff like that. So it was nice having conversations of that motif and hearing what they were doing. And I didn't do much talking. I just listened, and the things I did talk about was more like the stuff we did back in the 70s and 80s in New York, stories of that nature. And it was fun. And really good food too. My two friends I stayed with are really great cooks. I mean really great cooks, you know. So that was real pleasant. And now I'm in Roanoke and up here at John's, and I'm trying to get him assist him, to he has this kind of motif of this is what he wants to do, blah blah. His kids, he wants to go to Cal, blah blah blah.
What do you mean motif?
The school and blah blah blah. So I'm gonna do my best to help him navigate into what he wants to do. So, and with that, back in in 1988, when my second wife died, I knew I had to leave New York and I had to tie up every little string I had in New York so I would never have to go back, right? And so that's one of the things I'm doing with John. I'm going to do my best to help him navigate to what he wants to do. And if he can't do that, then I will have done everything I can do and I won't have to, unless I want to come visit.
Help him figure out what it is he needs to do.
Right, exactly. So,
but he's got to figure it out. But maybe you can
Right. I can.
nudging him towards
Yes,
it.
I can help him navigate, and not only does he have to figure it out, he has to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do it for him.
So it's got to be his idea.
Right. Right. So, but I can be there to support him and navigate him and all of the above. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be here till end of February if that's what it takes. If not, and I can always go back to the deep green. I have a sense that the winter won't be like Christmas was, 60 below zero.
Right.
But I really did need a little break from Colonel Sanders and the Californians and the New Jerseyans and the tweakers. So
I know. Wouldn't Colonel Sanders? He's your closest neighbor.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I have two on either side, but they're both about a quarter mile away. And the guy on one side, he has Airbnb, so I see him irregularly. I talk to him a little bit more, like maybe once or twice a month. He's a nice guy. He's a retired policeman, and he was injured as a policeman, and so he has.
That reminds me. You got that friend who's a cop who trains cops.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
It'd be interesting to hear his analysis of the Memphis situation.
Of the what?
Memphis.
What's going on in Memphis?
Well, they talked about the release of the video for about a week.
I don't even know what happened. What happened?
Well, even Biden came out and made a statement on it. So
I don't know about no. Tell me. I don't know.
Basically, what happened was it was five black cops had beaten the living shit out of a guy, and he died.
Okay.
And they were angry and cursing him and hitting him and broke his neck and destroyed him.
5 black cops?
5 black cops.
And they beat a white man?
Black man.
Black man. Okay.
But it was, I mean, they talked about it for a week before they released it. It was a big deal because Biden was saying everybody needs to stay peaceful. You had people on the radio talking about how it needed to be peaceful and analyzing it. We've had a whole week of analyzing the cop deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they charged these 5 cops with murder.
Right.
Right off, it was about a month ago, but they spent about two to 3 weeks before they charged them with murder, and then they said next week we're going to release this horrible tape. Everybody's going to get to see next week. It was last night. But anyway, so it would be very interesting. What?
Did they release the tape?
They released the tape, yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard people say horrific words like that. You hear the chief of police saying, "This can't stand this kind of shit."
Right. But so I would tell you what. This isn't something new. This has been going on since we've had police, and police protect the status quo, not the public, right? And when you are a police officer, it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, you're wearing blue. And so no matter what race you are, you're representing the status quo. So these guys are representing the status quo. And so it's not that they're black, it's that they're blue, right? So now the one interesting thing that I'm hearing from your description there is that if they were white, I don't think they would have gone straight to, bringing them in for murder because, Floyd, it took a long time and before that came out and basically we were scared of our health, and so it'll be interesting to see just the the little dynamic of these guys being black rather than white.
Right.
So that's my little take on it. But like I said, police don't represent the public. I mean, it's really, people don't realize that police forces, even in the cities, did not become municipal police until after World War One. They were representing economic entities, and they were like a good example is New York City and Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall did not. It was a economic entity. It really wasn't a political entity. You know what I mean?
Where was Tammany Hall?
Oh, Tammany Hall. It was a political machine that ran New York for about 80 years, up until, well, really up until up until the 1920s. But from the Civil War, before the Civil War,
Pure patronage.
yes, exactly. Mhm. So it
Yeah,
wasn't
giving
really
giving people
representing
money
any.
for votes.
They would buy them.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, they would buy them. That's why all the
They
laws about,
promised them money for their vote,
right.
then they had to deliver.
Yes, and they, on Christmas everyone would get a turkey, that kind of stuff. You know,
Right.
so,
Well,
Uncle
this
John
is
would get a
clearly
job, that kind of stuff.
this is clearly it's a turning point on par with George Floyd.
Okay, it'll
It's
be
not.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's stirring the pot.
Right. I'll have to, but the pot that needs to be stirred is that it's this is I mean, like I said, this is, I mean, in the 70s and 80s, like I always kind of just shake my head when people go, "Oh, things are so dangerous." Well, New York City went bankrupt between 1970 and 1990, right? I mean, they were bankrupt then, so they didn't mow the lawn, they didn't pick up the garbage, and they cut the cops from like 30,000 to like 8,000. That was the lowest point. And like just in my one little neighborhood, there were 5 murders a week for 20 years. That's a lot of people. And no one said, "Oh, it's so dangerous." Of course, I mean, everyone knew it was dangerous, But you know what I'm saying? No one puts any of this stuff into historical perspective, you know. And from the 70s and 80s, um, in New York City, they had stop and frisk, and virtually every week, about 12 African men between the ages of 14 and 70 died in that process. Again, no one's putting this, George Floyd into historical, this is something that's been going on. And again, it has more to do with, protecting um, the status quo. And the other interesting thing, when you really look at the statistics, first of all, the FBI doesn't collect any of these statistics. Some of the cities themselves do collect them and publish them, right? And so one of the interesting things is that when you take, I don't know how many cities there are in America, over 70,000, but there are quite a few. But there are roughly about 1,500 cities of all different sizes that give this data. Like New York City doesn't do it, either does LA. Chicago does. But anyway, um, when you look at it for a year, almost as many white people get killed by the police as black. Right? Most people would say, "What? That can't be." But it is true because it's not so much about race, but it is about the status quo. So it's, so there are a lot of things. So if people really get upset about it, they should step back and really look at the bigger picture because there are other things going on in that people aren't seeing coming down the road. Um, we are going to enter a point where we are being made believe that we can't believe in our government, so we're going to let. It's just like medicine, right? You know, medicine in America was pretty much done on the auspices of groups of doctors or individual doctors would be basically somewhat kind of nonprofit, but their communities would take care of them, right? And then in mid 70s and then into the 80s, corporations, oh, we can do this much better, right? HMOs, and it'll be a thing of size, and we'll take it. Well, it's way worse. It costs way more. It's unbelievably corrupt, right? But that's where our governments are going to be going soon, and no one's even watching this. No one's even seeing this. And there's going to be the United States is a very blessed country because we have oceans on either side, right? We have the most arable land on the freaking planet, and our workers are like 16 Chinese workers equals the productivity of one American worker. And so when like China's going to just, in 5 years, I mean, they won't even be a country anymore, right? And they have so many demographic problems. They have no oil, they have no food, they import everything. And if we were to put, and where they are located, they can severely be blockaded, meaning they can be stopped from India. India could hold its foot on China's neck if it wanted to, because everything
And
that,
how would they do that?
well, everything that goes into China uh, or comes out of China goes right by this little bottleneck of a piece of water right in front of
So
China.
they could do it with cannon fire.
Yeah, they could easily stop it, easily. And one of the
Well, that would
things,
be clearly an act of war.
well, they could do it, but all they'd have to do is not police that waterway, because there are other countries um, that there are pirates there, and the United States Navy and India keeps that waterway open. All they had to have to do is not do that, not attack
Well,
those.
you don't think the Chinese would send patrol boats in to protect their traffic?
The problem with that is that China has this 700 ship navy, but none of those boats can go more than 400 miles without being refueled. And the
Well, they take
Chinese,
tankers. They send tankers with them.
no,
I don't.
not, but China does not have the technology. The U.S. Navy refuels its navy that way. Like they can do it in a hurricane. China cannot. Just
So
like
they
they
got to
have a
be
pretty
thinking
big
about how
airport.
to do it.
They don't have the technology. They don't do it.
They don't have the technology for a
No,
tanker.
no. I mean, they have a tanker. You can put oil in the boat and send it to another port and take the oil off it, but they don't have the technology to refuel a ship out in the middle of the ocean.
That seems crazy. It seems unbelievable, really.
Well, it's very difficult to do. It's very dangerous. We have these two
Why is it
ships.
dangerous?
Hmm?
Why is it dangerous? I don't quite get
Well,
it.
you have two ships out in the middle of the ocean.
You mean they're getting shot at?
No, just the waves, just the ocean itself. You don't not even getting shot at, just the waves. We're the only navy in the world that does that. No, the English don't do it. The French don't do it. No, nobody does it but us, because we're the only ones that have a global reach. Nobody else has a global reach.
Well, we were talking about China. I mean, India making China vulnerable, and I can't see how the way you described it really made them vulnerable unless it were a war.
No, it's called economics. If India's going to be the more dominant economic um, entity in that neck of the woods, not China. China's going to fall apart. I mean, just look what happened with the they got all upset about being locked down because of COVID, right? Well, in reality, that was just a cover. That the people are pissed off with the CCP. They don't want to live in a prison country, right? And the other thing about China is
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Al. I mean, this doesn't jive to me. It doesn't. The people clamored when the people clamored to have the regulations lifted. The Communist Party lifted them.
no, but I think it was more about we didn't really see. I mean, I've sent you many, many, many videos of the guy with the beard, right?
Zayan.
Yeah, and he speaks very clearly, very eloquently, very with the data of what's going on about China. He says China is already gone.
Yeah, but there are other people saying the opposite.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm just saying.
I
don't
mean,
think it's
so
slam dunk.
but the real problem with both Russia and Z is they have cut themselves off, especially Z. Like what's interesting, the NSA had totally wired Putin's phones and everything. They knew everything that everyone was saying and what was. I mean, Biden was going. Russia's going to invade Ukraine. Even the Ukrainians didn't think the Russians were going to invade, but Putin said it, weeks before, right? Because the NSA was listening to everything he said, and that's because Putin has an inner circle of about 12 people. Well,
So
Z has.
what you're saying is that the NSA was listening to knew Putin was planning it and intended to do it.
Yep.
Well, see, I don't think he did. I think he was playing a chess game, and like he has come out and said, "You gave me no way out."
Right. But
I think he was looking for a way out.
But
I
that's
don't think he was
not
looking for a
what
way
I'm
in.
really saying is that we don't know about Z because Z is talking to no one. He is.
But okay, we can change the subject.
So I mean that's the point I was trying to make was that Z over the last 15 years has turned himself and China into a country of a personality, right? It's just him. It's nobody else, right? No one else is in charge. And when you're doing that, it's hard to, micromanage a country of
Well,
one
now,
point.
I thought that that's what has been going on in China for a very long time. A strongman, starting with
Well,
Mao.
not until Z. The between Mao and Z, they had three other presidents, and that's why China took off economically. Is that they basically let the people and the municipalities in those areas because they're very, 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 very varied. There are a lot of different racial groups, a lot of different everything. And those three, over a 30 something year period, those three leaders diversified everything, let everybody take care of their own thing and expand the economy. And Z for the last 15 years has put it all on, he's in charge. And he doesn't let anyone, because of their social credit system and their total unbelievable um, surveillance of everyone. Um, their schools, there is no individuality,
Well, that's going on here too.
but not
Every
to
search
that
we
level.
every search we make is recorded.
Of course, but see, that's a different thing. What we have is surveillance economy. They're doing that to focus us to buy shit, not to control our. I mean, they do it to control our political motif, but all they're doing is you have an opinion, you search Google on that opinion, and they just put you in a silo of more and more and more of that, right? Rather than a diversity of opinions. And yeah, so they are doing that, but they're not controlling the individual like they're in jail. They're just putting the individual in America in a place where they feel more and more comfortable and convenient about their life. Meaning what in America they're trying to do is have the individual not question in what direction they're going, right? Not and but you can talk about anything you want to talk about. You can, I mean, look at all our conversations. We've been all over the universe, and they're not trying to control that. Now they're trying to have you to be comfortable so you don't go outside and learn something new that might change or the narrative of the status quo, which
Let
is
me make a point here.
sure, go for it.
I just saw a guy last night was doing a piece on how Russia is turning back to Stalinism stuff and the mind control and telling on your neighbors and getting arrested and all this kind of stuff. And then he made the statement,
Hmm.
while no one has yet been put in jail.
What? There's like 20, 30,000 people in jail.
He said no one's in jail.
Huh.
Now, how do you know? How I would have thought that I would have heard some reference that there was 20,000 Russians in jail for First Amendment things. What he said was, he said RT is more free than our media.
Now, who's saying this?
Guy he was interviewing, the guy, I wrote his name down. I don't think.
I mean, no. What was he, a representative of the Communist Party, of the Politburo, or I mean, who was he?
He was a reporter talking about how Stalinism is taking over.
Now, who did he report? So was he American, Russian, French?
BBC, on the BBC.
On the BBC. So was he American, French, German? I mean,
well, why don't you just let me say what he said?
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, who was he? What's the basis for not? I mean, I wouldn't be saying it if I didn't think it was not a worthwhile point.
Well, I thought you already said it. You said that no one's in jail.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's
He's
what I. So I thought you
story.
made your point that he said that no one's in jail.
He was telling the story of how repressive the state is, but nobody's been put in jail yet. He said.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Wait a minute. We've been talking for months how repressive Russia is to people voicing their opinion. We've been talking about that for months.
Who's we?
The public discussion. What's been said on NPR, what's been said on MSNBC, CNN.
But do you believe any of that? I don't believe any of that.
I didn't say I'm not commenting on whether to believe it or not. What I'm saying is we've been saying that. You do agree with that?
Well, because that's our propaganda. I mean, we're in a war too. We've given umpteen $1 billion to this, and that should, as inflation is rising. I mean, that's part of this.
Wait a minute. I'm saying that we've been talking about what a shithead Putin is, putting these people in jail. You can't speak your mind. You're in danger in Russia. That's been a constant theme for a long time.
Yeah, since this war has been going, that's been the
Okay,
narrative.
it's been a theme, but
Yeah.
this guy came along, was advocating the theme, but his journalistic integrity brought him to say, to make the additional observation that's normally left out, is people are not being put in jail yet.
Right. Well, it would
Which
make
challenges,
sense.
which tells me, I've been saying for a long time, everything we've been reading about this has been skewed.
Right. Of course it's skewed. I mean, how could you not think it's not skewed? Because this war, I mean, that's what Lao Tzu, he said, all war is political. So this is a political thing, right?
No, well, the question is the integrity of our journalism.
Well, again, from my point of view, we've never had integrity in our journalism.
I think I've now heard 25 people say they've never seen it this bad. I remember you saying, when I told you 15 or 16, I've heard say that.
Right. Well, I constantly, look at Pulitzer and Hearst, yellow journalism in the 1950s, the Red Scare. I mean, I saw that right there as a.
Well, you might be right, Al, but I'm just telling you that there are a lot of people who go out of their way to make the comment differently.
Well, okay, so that's their opinion, and I don't know what motivates their opinion, and most people's opinions that
What do you mean you don't know what motivates their opinion?
Okay,
you can assume that they're basically not lying. They're expressing an opinion.
But what's that opinion? What's that opinion based on? I mean, like I said,
based on their experience, observation.
Well, but we were just talking a few minutes ago about the internet spying on us, and I said, well, they
What's
do
that got to do with it?
Well, because
when someone's people have expressed the opinion that the media is way out of whack as much as it's ever been. I keep hearing people say that.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's their opinion, and I'm sure it is a narrative of the status quo saying that because they don't.
Well, that's bullshit, Al. It's not the status quo. The status quo is saying the
opposite. Okay. So I have a little question for you. That may go to this. So December 11th, I think it was 50th anniversary of when Congress said all of the records on JFK's assassination should be given to the people, right? And it was supposed to be given December 11th in 2017. And, Donald Trump didn't do it, right? He said, "Oh, I'm not going to do it," right? He gave some excuse, and then.
What's your idea of what he had in mind? What was he? He was convinced that he had to protect the government.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Trump was protecting.
Yes, Trump was actually protecting the deep state.
Okay, well, the deep state was after Trump. That's according to the theory of a lot of people.
So anyway, so he could have, by law, it was a law that it was supposed to be given. Everything that we had supposed to be given, and I forgot which judge it was, but one of his friends who was, either Supreme Court or appellate judge said, "So why aren't you doing this?" And he said, "I just can't. It would, it would shake things up too much." And the guy
said, "That's what he said."
Yeah, and the judge said to him, "But you came here to shake things up, so put it out there, let it be shook up." And Donald said, "No, it would, it would break all norms." And he goes, "What are you talking about? That's what you do. You break all the norms." And then, so he made some excuse and said, "Okay, in 2 years, it'll be out." So then Biden, and this is last December 11th, Biden, that's when he was supposed to let it go. And he just ignored it. He didn't even make any statements about it. He just didn't do it, right? And then it's um, Donald Trump is the FBI goes in and they find all these top secret blah blah blahs about that's in his garage, and bottom line, have you read that the Justice Department looked at everything and they said, well, yes, these are all top secret things, but they have nothing to do with national security. Do you know that our government um, makes 1 million documents top secret every day? 1 million every
Wow.
freaking day, and most of it is about stuff that either individuals in the government, don't want the general public, like what they spent on, you know, for lunch that the taxpayer paid for, or their car, or I mean, these things are the things they make top secret.
Well, we've moved quite a far afield from
Well, but it
Russia.
all kind
Whether or
of
not Russia's putting people in jail for free speech violation.
it deals with the same thing. It deals with the the dynamic. The real thing that's a far afield is that none of the governments um, on this planet are servicing the needs of their constituencies. That's the real issue.
Have they ever?
Well, they've it's in
I'm
America.
sure at times yes, and sometimes no. But
Yeah, well, in America, it's kind of like a pendulum. In every government, it's kind of like a pendulum. And in reality,
right, I can spy
I
that.
would say never have they ever really serviced the needs of the public.
Right.
Some governments do a better job,
Okay, so you're making the case that no government is serving the needs of their public.
but some
What?
do a better job. Like you look at Sweden, they have health care, they have,
But what point are you making there by
is
bringing that
that
up?
generally um, that the government, it goes back to my narrative of the globalist agenda that's been here since Babylon to basically constrict what humans are really here. It's not to make money. It's not to have a nice house or a car. Why we are here on this planet is to figure out who and what we are and what we should be doing. And because we are so distracted and constricted by having to pay our bills, that we are never given, and we're given oh a little candy of religion to say, oh, if you're thinking about that, here, just go to church Sunday and maybe read your book, but it's never given um, the the populace. Our governments aren't supplying or giving the people a place and time, and a place, to discuss this, right? And I'm just watching, and that's another reason I left the Deep Green, because I was so, I'm out there in the middle of the woods. I'm surrounded by this group who are running away from what they see as, the problems of California, the problems of Florida. Oh, and they're bringing their problems with them because they're not facing the problems. Same with John. You know he has no real problems. Come on, his parents give him 5 grand a month, and he has, but he has this existential thing that is driving him nuts. And he has the space and time to just think about that all the time. That's why he is having real issues. But he can't face those issues, and that's the real thing. That's why the war in Ukraine is going on, is that no one's facing their issues, right? And they're
What now?
using.
What? Wait a minute. What did you just say?
I would say that the major problem of why there are wars going on is that the governments and the people in those countries aren't facing the real problems of why they aren't happy or what's you know going on. Russia. I mean, look at Russia, right? Before Putin invaded, Russia was doing pretty good. They were the sole supplier of the EU with all the things they needed. Oil, gas, fertilizer, um, strategic metals, you name it, right? That alone should have given the confidence to Putin that, well, NATO isn't going to invade Russia because they need our stuff. And we're doing a
Well,
good
wait a
job.
minute now. And NATO, I mean, we created, we, we changed the government in Ukraine.
Hmm.
We imposed a new government. We observed when the rightist battalions were doing atrocities to the Donbass people. And let me see, where was that? And we created the largest army in Europe in Ukraine.
But in a very fractionalized way. I mean,
Wait a minute, what did you
Putin
say
has
there?
done
What does that
more
mean?
to solidify NATO than anything else.
Say it again.
Putin has done more to solidify
No, that's not what I
NATO
said.
than
What I said
anything
was,
else.
what I said was that we were building up the forces and the government and advancing a hostile position on Russia's border.
Not really. I mean,
What do you mean, not really?
A done deal. Ukraine hadn't joined NATO.
How much?
And when Russia went into Crimea and into Donbass and into the other 7 countries, NATO rolled over.
That's changing the subject.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I thought we were talking about what was the concern that Russia had about what the U.S. was doing in Ukraine.
Well, and I responded by saying Russia went out and attacked 7 other countries, took property, put in puppet governments, and NATO didn't even blink.
We did a regime change in Ukraine.
But so did
we were training. We put in $5 billion prior to the regime change. After the regime change for 8 years, we built their military up and trained their military, trained it in Europe, trained it all around. We built the largest military in Europe. In Ukraine.
Ukraine wasn't the largest military in Europe.
I think it was, or at least it was.
No, because they had no real military industrial complex themselves. They only had 200,000 people under arms, and that was about it.
Well, 270,000 people under arms is what I thought it was.
Russia had 1 million.
And that was the largest army in Europe.
No, Russia has 1 million.
Well, if you're counting Russia and Europe, I wasn't counting Russia and Europe. I was counting. You were building a hostile force to Russia.
But until the Ukraine, I mean, everyone and his brother expected Russia to just, take over Ukraine in 3 days. No one had.
No, that's changing the subject.
No, I'm not. You're saying that.
I think it is. I mean, we're talking.
Ukraine was the largest militaries in Europe, and I'm saying no one believed that they could even, that they'd last 3 days. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you that the globalist agenda of the unipolar transnational state didn't orchestrate this. I agree 100% they did, right? But I'm part of this orchestration was giving the script to Putin to play because.
And what did the word say? Was it actually a paragraph?
Oh, I'm sure it was a whole booklet. But it
was a whole book?
Basically, everything he has done so far
Wait, no. I'm talking about the script he was handed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everything he has done so far pretty much has he's followed the script. And that's why they're in such
Well, I'm trying to ask you what the script said. How do you break
the script
down?
said first to basically not do due diligence on you if you're going to attack someone, you do due diligence. You go in and you understand the dynamic of what their military is, what
So he
kind of.
did or did not follow the script.
No, that the script was not to get due diligence, just to go in blindly, and that's exactly what Russia did. They went in blindly
Okay.
because
Well, that's
I mean they're
okay.
they are a country that is 10 times. I don't let's see, 40 million. They're 140 million. So what is that? They're like 20 or 100 times more.
So what you're saying was that Putin betrayed his country.
Pretty much.
No, well, I mean, it sounds like he did.
Yeah, that's why I said pretty much. Yeah.
Well, no, okay, Putin betrayed his country.
Yeah, and but not just him, but his whole inner circle, all of those oligarchs, all of the above, right? Now,
Well,
now,
so when they went in and told Ukraine to stay in their barracks, the problem wasn't with them. Why did they do that?
excuse me, I didn't get that.
When they first went into Ukraine on day one, they told the Ukrainian army to stay in their barracks.
Right.
The problem wasn't with them. The problem that they needed to change was with the government. This was not a war. This is a special military operation to accomplish an objective.
Right.
Stay in your barracks. Why did he do that?
Why didn't who do what?
No, I said, why did Putin do that? How is that consistent with what you were just describing?
Because he was
doing?
given a script, right? That doesn't mean the script was going, his expectations of what that script were wrong. He should have never trusted these guys because what's going on is he's being set up. He's like Oswald, he's being set up. He's being portrayed as the worst enemy since Adolf Hitler,
They duped him into betraying his country, and now they're going to get him.
Right, because that's what you do.
Well, I mean, they certainly were on flimsy ground, having confidence that he wouldn't see through that.
Well, we had 20 years of feeding him money and position, and he had no real gravitas or a curriculum vitae to get the job in '99. I mean, he was just basically a street thug. He was a bagman for the mayor of Leningrad. What do they call Leningrad these days? Not Leningrad.
He's already demonstrated that he has 80% of the approval rating.
No, not in '99. No,
I didn't say in '99. He's demonstrated competence. But you're wanting to tell me that his competence wasn't recognized back then. He was being
groomed. He was being groomed. And the population, all the population wants is to be fed, have a roof over their head, be left alone, be able to buy a new pair of sneakers every now and then, and watch a movie.
True. That's partly true, but it's certainly not fully true.
No, but
that's not all the population wants.
And also to give a tip of the hat to whatever nostalgic thing they're thinking about at the moment.
Well, okay.
America's great. Let's make it better.
Presidential elections are just charades all over the world.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Well, are they or aren't they?
Yes, yes, I'll say yes. But nothing's 100%. There are a lot.
I mean,
There's an
somebody's a pretty
election
good script
here,
writer, doesn't
and
it?
there's an election there, where you know they, but anybody, premier, prime minister, president. I mean, just look at all these, useless talking head sock puppets. The guy who's the president of Canada, France, Germany, England, United States, Mexico, Brazil, you name it. I can't name a single, you know, leader of any government that really is righteous and representing the well-being of the public. The last one I saw was Gaddafi, and look what happened to him. His people didn't overthrow him. NATO did. And for no reason at all. He wasn't attacking his people. They just wanted to get rid of him because they couldn't control him. And anyone they can't control, they get rid of, one way or the other. And that's why in American politics, we have the best politicians money can buy. And that kind of goes for Russia, too. I mean, no one in their Politburo really is representing the people. They're representing themselves, you know?
Well, see, I'm thinking it's quite a bit more complicated than what you're detailing.
Well, okay, it could be. I don't know. This is just my opinion from my
Well, I
observation.
mean, yeah, but it's you have this. You
And I
have
and I sent I've been sending you a great deal of YouTubes that
you
back
have
up
the script.
my opinion, right?
You
And
have a script, and
and
everything
you
dovetails
send
with
me
it.
stuff and I look at it. You sent me
I don't
that
know why you're
stuff.
talking about that. I don't know why you're
Well,
talking about
because
that.
I'm just saying that it's not just my opinion is formulated by stuff that I observe, and I send you the
No,
stuff.
you. It goes through your filter, and your filter has a shade to it, and it comes out to reinforce your filter.
Right.
It's
So do
like
you. I
Mormonism.
mean, that's just like you. You have that same thing.
That's like Mormonism. That's what Mormonism was all about.
Well, you have your filter. Everything that you don't like, you call Mormonism,
No, that's not.
and
You're
you
missing
feel
the point.
superior about it because you have overcome your
No.
addiction to Mormonism.
Oh, Al, come on now. Don't piss me off. I mean, goddamn. Waste my time with bullshit?
Oh,
I mean, just saying any damn thing?
well, so why is Russia doing so poorly in Ukraine when it has a military, 20 times its size?
Because they're not really being aggressive. They don't have
Oh,
the
they're bombing.
objective.
I mean, come on, look. Don't you look at the imagery of the cities that they've destroyed? I
You
mean,
haven't been.
Ukraine is not, you know, um,
What,
shelling,
what,
bombing,
what I
sending
should have
cruise
said their
missiles in.
objectives.
You know,
You asked me why I thought it was going the way it's going,
right.
right?
So you're saying that Russia's holding back, that they're
Yes.
that they're actually waging this war with compassion.
Not compassion. With not wanting to have too many casualties, not seeing the upside
Oh,
of that.
you mean 200,000 civilians dead isn't a lot of casualties?
Well, it is a lot of, but they said surrender, and they said no, fuck you, we're not going to surrender. Not only that, we're going to push you out.
Well, I
And
mean,
so,
but
so you
someone
want
comes
you
into
want to
your
duke it out.
country, they, that's understandable,
I don't understand why you talk over me.
And did you check out the fact that Russia took 4 million children and mothers into Russia, women who were under 30, because their demographics is collapsing, and they need, um, children and women that will bear more children into their country. 4 million. 4 million.
And your point is that they're a fifth column.
No, they will be a fifth column.
They will
They
be a
aren't.
fifth
I mean, those people didn't go willingly. The Russians said, "We're going to bomb the shit out of your like Mariupol, right? We're going to just blow this thing off the face. You got a choice. You can stay here and die, or you can get on this bus and go to Russia. Well, we want to go west. Forget it. You're not going west. You can stay here and die because about somewhere
if you want to
between
get out of the danger zone of this war.
yes, you can either go to Russia or die because the other one they said no, we want to go west. There are people over there with buses. Nope, we're going to kill
you.
You
can't expect the Russians to take them west.
No. There were buses waiting for those people, about 10 miles outside of where Russia could shell them. And they said, just let us go over there and get on that bus and go west. And they said, no, get on this bus and go to Russia or stay here and die. And the people who did, and there were somewhere.
Well, it sounds like a poppycock statement out of the Western media.
Have you spent any effort to see whether what I'm saying is true or not?
Yeah, I've actually been paying not real close attention, but I've had my mind open to when they were taking people from.
But did you go and I mean?
I was wondering
about if you go to the Red Cross, you go to the Red Cross.
Why are you talking over me?
Well, because okay, I won't talk over.
Well, I don't understand it. It's like, why would you do it?
Can I talk now? I don't want to talk over you.
It doesn't make sense for you to talk over me.
It's called a conversation. It's called a conversation.
No, not talking over is not a conversation. It's the opposite of a conversation. I mean, there's one thing to try to say something, but then when it's a give and take. But just talking over, I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can claim to be an exploration and not be a listener. I just don't see it. So I was wondering from early on when they were taking people back into Russia. I was wondering, waiting, hoping to see some news story, some information about what they were doing once they got there. What was the story more than just the initial story? And I've been paying attention, wanting to know exactly what you're talking about is how are they treating the people in Russia and how is that working out? On one hand, it sounds like it might have been to take people out of the danger zone was an act of compassion because they knew they were going to have to destroy the city. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think this war serves anyone but the military-industrial complex. It doesn't serve Russia, and it doesn't serve the Ukraine.
Nor France, nor every person.
Pretty much anybody on the planet. It doesn't serve anybody on the planet. No.
Right. Right.
So, if I was Putin and I wasn't a bought-up scumbag, I would, at this point, say, okay, let's both sides stop shooting, and we will go back to the line that we were at before the war started. We'll pull out of all of the property, we'll leave everything
and you don't
except.
Know why they don't do that?
Right.
You don't know their argument for not doing that?
To start negotiations for peace, a lasting peace, which would secure Russia's security issues.
Let me explain it to you. Apparently, you have not noticed the early negotiations before the war started. Putin tried to negotiate an understanding, and we refused to do it. Putin tried to work out a peace agreement and understanding with Zelensky, and the West came along and said, fuck that. The West is not playing honestly. You can't come in against a dishonest partner and make those kind of offers, because you're not going to, as long as it's not an honest process, and it's never been an honest process ever. Putin tried to negotiate away this war. You had both Germany and France going and having long conversations with Putin, coming out and saying, before the war started, we need to work out our security agreements. We can't just go and impose and bully and do our regime change when we want to. We can't just do that. So Putin tried to work it out. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I saw early on, from the beginning, before the war started. 6 weeks before the war started, I started seeing that.
Well, so you would say that was an obvious observation.
That's what I observed. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, with that obvious observation, what gives the motivation to bring on mass death to innocent people?
Oh, you think he was going after blood?
Have you listened to any of the his or any of his spokespeople talk about that there is no Ukraine, there's only Russia in that piece of land? Anyone who's in that piece of land who considers themselves Ukrainian are basically mentally psychotic, and if they can't be healed, then we have to destroy them. And if we have to destroy everyone in Russia, everyone in the Ukraine, we will.
If you ever can back that up, do it for me.
Okay.
I don't think it's accurate, but if you can ever reference that or get somebody with a responsible analyst who says that, observed that, I'd be very interested.
Let's see if I can get.
I don't think he said that. When he said,
give me YouTube stating Russian representative speaking on Ukrainians needing to be completely destroyed if they don't agree with Russia.
Well, if we can't.
Okay, here's one. Look, there's 26. No, there's 47 right? YouTubes that say that. So let's play a few. Let's see. What's this one say?
Stop. The 9,208th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is maintenance of peace and security of Ukraine. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Germany, Latvia, Poland, and Ukraine to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I also invite His Excellency Mr. Olaf Skog, head of the delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, to participate in this meeting.
Let me ask, why did Russia sign the Minsk agreement?
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I kindly ask you to take your seats, please?
Al, we don't want to sit and listen to this. Why did Russia? Well, what was my question? I just said it. Slipped my mind. Why did Russia sign the Minsk agreement?
Whenever there was an international crisis, the Canadian Prime Minister was always the first world leader to pick up the phone, call the carrier. The left is a joke carrier. But in New York, where there's a few wibbles along the way, it's pretty much stopped the upward march. The green line, that's Texas, where power prices have dropped by a quarter in the last 5 years. And that just leaves.
What were you saying?
Why, what, your opinion, why did Russia sign the Minsk agreement? And why are they demanding the U.S. go back and sign it now?
I have no idea.
The Minsk agreement was going to leave sovereignty over the Donbass to Ukraine.
I have no idea.
The Minsk agreement.
Oh, I know what the Minsk. I know what it
negotiated.
says. I know what it is. You know.
Okay, well, why would he have done that if his objective was, as you said, fuck those bastards, destroy them?
Well, that was how many years ago?
2005. Well, they're
8
talking
years.
about it now. They want the U.S.
It was
to
8
come
years
back to
ago.
it. They're
So,
ta-
so a lot of
they're
things
talking-
can change in 8 years. Even the globalist agenda can change in 8 years. Time frames change. I have no idea. I really don't. So
when did Putin say there's no Ukraine as part of Russia? About when?
well, he has said it for at least 15 years in different ways at different times in different speeches. But he said that Ukraine is always been Russia, which it's not true. You know, it's really
Well,
only
wait a minute. What was that not true?
no, it wasn't. About
Wh-
for
wh- how-
100
when-
years,
wh-
for 100 years, you know, under the Tsar had stepped into the Ukraine and then gave Ukraine back its autonomy. And then with World War One and the fall of the Tsar, after World War One, Joe Stalin, once Russia was, you know, consolidated as, Soviet Russia under Joe Stalin, he came in the 20s and took Ukraine and killed about 6 million.
But it wasn't. It was not part of the Soviet. How did it get into the Soviet Union?
Joe Stalin came in, invaded, and killed 6 million Ukrainians, and then moved 6 million Russians into Ukraine, and basically, and those were Russians he didn't like, you know, but he didn't want to kill them or put them in, he didn't want to kill them, and so he might need them sometime. They were semi, the engineers and school people, and he might need them someday. And he did that. I mean, he actually half of his military, his generals and people of that. The guy who gave them the space thing, his number one Russian space guy, Joe Stalin, stuck in a prison. But people he didn't really like and didn't think he could use again, kill him, right? But otherwise, he would put them places where he didn't see them; they weren't really a threat, and he put 6 million Russians into the Ukraine. So that's where the Russians came from, right? Then in the 20s, he did this great thing of trying to turn all of farming into collective in Russia, and that failed. So he took all of the food away from the Ukraine and starved them to death. Even half of the Russians he starved to death, and then he replaced them with another 6 million Russians before World War II. So the Russians who were in the Ukraine came in between 1919 and 1929, and that was about 6 million Russians, right? That's how the Russians got there. They weren't like born there. They weren't, part of Russia, part of the Ukraine for the last 600 years. No. There was a period when, yes, the Tsar came in, like in the 1840s, and Ukraine was part of that for maybe 40, 50 years. And then he gave them autonomy and still kind of was under them, but they had autonomy. And so that's the thumbnail history of Russia and Ukraine. And yes, they're, and see, the Ukraine is really the breadbasket. Russia really is not a very fertile place. Now, it has a lot of resources and it's pretty interesting located to facilitate to sell those resources either to Asia or to Western Europe. But the other problem with Russia is that a good portion of it is flat, and there are 5 doorways into Russia, and that's where the Germans, German came in through that. And so at Yalta, not Yalta, at the place in Iran where they had the capital of Iran is when they split up the world, Tehran. Because Russia lost 50 million people in World War II, and that's one reason why we won that war. We just bled Germany with Russian blood. They said we need a security blanket, right? So we gave them all of the Baltic, Eastern Europe, right? Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, all of that, everything on their border, right? We gave them, right? And that's how the Soviet Union was formed, and we let them do it. And we actually kind of supported them, like in the 1970s. Again, Russia did one of these stupid things about, you know, instead of letting the people grow the food, they were going to tell them how to do it, and Russia nearly starved to death. All of this, not just Russia, the Soviet Union nearly starved to death because of this malfeasance of growing. And that wasn't just, like I said, it was the Soviet Union, because they were making, like, Ukraine and other countries send all of their food to Russia, and then Russia parcels it back out. And in that transportation, half of it rotted. And then they had some really bad weather for 2 years. And the United States fed the Soviet Union during the 70s when we were, and a good chunk of the 80s when we were at the height of our Cold War. Now, if we really were at a Cold War with Russia, we would have just let them starve. But
Well, that was Reagan's détente.
No, but it actually started with Jimmy Carter.
No, I meant Nixon's détente.
No, but the starvation.
Nixon's the one that sold the Soviets the grain.
No, Jimmy Carter did the most, and Reagan, still carried it on, right? But Nixon
bailed out Russia with grain.
But the majority because the majority of it lasted for 10 years, and it was in the 70s and a little bit of the 80s. So yeah, Nixon was, he started trying to do the détente thing, but then he got embroiled in, Watergate, and
Nixon made what was called a Continental Grain Sale.
Yeah, but that was the first one. We kept doing it. The majority of
it was the first one.
Yeah, the majority of it was during Jimmy Carter. But okay, so let's just say it was all under Nixon's nickel. Now that guy's a total, red, anti-communist, Cold War warrior. And so why did he do that?
Détente. That was
why?
what he said.
But why? I mean, if we're in this Cold War, why even have détente? And here they're going to starve to death.
You'd have to go back and study it at the time. You can't. Why? Doesn't make sense to me to be questioning now. Why did they want to do it back then? But because he did do it.
I'm saying we did it because Russia was what is known as the loyal opposition, meaning to be able to have a war, to be able to have a military industrial complex, you have to have a perceivable enemy, right? And the manufacturing of atomic bomb isn't the bomb itself; it's the manufacturing of the fissile material. And Russia had just suffered the worst you could. Everything was bombed into dust, and within 3 years they have an atomic bomb. Like I said, it's not. They could have stolen every blueprint, but unless you have the factories to produce the uranium 235 and the plutonium, that's what makes an atomic bomb. That's why it's not easy for some third world country to do it, because you need, that whole industrial thing to manufacture that stuff. How could Russia do that in 3 years? We gave them all of that so they would be a, hey, boy, they got the atomic. We got to be scared. We got to spend $1 zillion on making more bombs.
When you say we, you think it was the top of our government that made that decision?
I would say it was what I call the unipolar, transnational, oligarchic fascist state. And that's United
And they
States.
were also in
United
control of
States
the head
is
of the government.
United States. The arm of the United States is the military-industrial complex. But the political and the economic is not the United States.
No,
And part of it is,
was the head of the
we are
government
the
on
largest
board with it?
manufacturer. We have the strongest economy, but we don't own it. We don't control
The
it.
question I was asking was the head of our government on board with that decision, or was it contrary to the head of the
No,
government?
everybody was on board, and those, here's Ike, right? So Ike's right in the middle of it, right? And the 2 hours before he stops being president, before Jack Kennedy gets sworn in, he does a speech about the military industrial complex. And if you listen to that speech, I mean, really listen to it, right? I mean, go on YouTube and listen to it and listen to every word. What's truly interesting is when he says, there is no foreign enemy more dangerous to our constitutional government than the military industrial complex. Right in the middle of Cold War, in about a year and a half, we're going to have almost blow up because of Cuba. And that was caused by.
He said the military industrial complex is the primary enemy.
Yep. There is, and I'm loosely quoting, because there is no other enemy more threatening to the physical well-being, life, and our constitutional way.
And what he meant was that we're not being threatened. We got ocean on both sides. We're pretty secure.
No, what he's saying is that the enemy was within the military-industrial complex. Not that
was a bigger problem than outside.
Yes.
Okay.
The real,
I can see that.
like I said,
which is the case. That could be said. It's the same thing is true today.
Right. And then, so Kennedy gets in, and he becomes aware that our government, that it's like there's 3 or 4 different governments in our government. He's supposed to be the president, the chief. He controls it, and he didn't. Do you know what COG is?
Yeah.
Continuation of government. That's the. Did you ever read the books 7 Days in May?
No, but I don't. Why are we going to the COG?
COG is.
I mean, okay. I think the point you're making was Kennedy challenged the system.
Right, and he got shot.
I know he got shot.
Right.
He challenged the system.
Right, and he got shot.
That doesn't tell you who shot him.
Right.
It tells you who might have shot him.
Well, basically, the military-industrial complex shot him, not because what's.
Well, I mean, the case can be made, but now you have to go to the evidence.
Well, the evidence. What really is interesting about the evidence is that
We've been here before several times.
right. It every time, like a good reason, they weren't even going to have the Warren Commission. They were just going to move
Okay.
on, and people, what
Well,
are you
you're
talking
back
about?
to the heavy hand. Evidence is a heavy hand.
Right.
Evidence
And every
of
time,
God.
exactly, all of the information that was collected, um, the stuff that the public got to see was just the summarization, and all of the records were supposed to be allowed to be seen, but then they said, "Oh no!" And then in 20 years, because if we show this now, it will give away our intelligence methods, right? And so that was in the 70s. And then in the 70s, they said, "Oh no, we have to wait another 20." And then in 91, they Congress passed a law stating that all that information had to be given.
Right. We just went over that,
Right,
and,
right.
and went up
And
to
then
Trump, and Trump said no
and then
too.
Trump said, "Oh, I can't do that." And Supreme Court judge or appellate or whatever that guy Rick said,
Well, I tell you what I suspect.
right?
I suspect that in the evidence there are indications that the CIA may have done things that anyone jumping to conclusions would conclude they did it.
Okay. So even if that's true, right? And let's say, well, just for argument's sake, that they did do it, right? Let's just say that, right? Everyone who would have been involved in that is dead, right? And so the CIA today said, "Well,
People
we're
get
not
old
like
and
that
die.
anymore, and those guys are dead, and we'll give Congress a little more oversight on what we're doing, and let's move on." And that would
Wait a minute. What I said was, I think there's probably evidence that could be interpreted or indicated by embellishing it a little bit at all that the CIA was involved. They may have actually thought about doing it.
okay. So
And if they
and
got
I
caught
said,
thinking about doing it,
I heard exactly what you said, and I said, let's just for argument's sake say that the CIA did kill him, right? That 100% the CIA killed him because they were pissed off that they got rid of their head guy. They got pissed off that they weren't going to be allowed to go into Cuba. They were pissed off because their secret war in Vietnam wasn't going to be allowed to go into a real big war. And oh, by the way, he's going to have us stop assassinating politicians around the world, and we're going to. So let's just say the CIA did it because they felt morally obligated to do it because they're real Americans and Kennedy was just some rich kid, right? So let's just say that's what happened, right? Well, here, 50 something years later, everybody who would have been involved with that is gone, is dead. There is not even anybody.
now what's the relevance of this?
Well, because that would be a good excuse for the CIA to say, okay, hey, we're going to give you every box we have on everything and see, yes, we did kill him, but that's
See,
not
that
us
doesn't make sense
anymore.
to me. That doesn't make sense. Why the CIA is going to want? If the CIA did it, they're going to want to cover it up forever.
Why?
The CIA does not want to be saddled with having killed Kennedy.
Well, but a good portion of the population in America already believes it. So if see the thing, but can I just say this? If the CIA were to come out and say, and let's say, like I said, the CIA actually did do it, because I don't really think it's the CIA who did it. They might have had a finger in it, but there are lots of this hidden hand isn't the CIA. The CIA is just their lackey. There isn't really them. But let's just say the CIA really did it for all those reasons I just enumerated. And today, if they came out and said, yes, here, read all the stuff, this is what happened, and we did it because we believed we were protecting America. And they could make a good um, thing on that. But listen, we're not that anymore. We have changed, and everyone who is involved is dead, right? And so we're going to become more. We're going to make a special congressional and Senate group that really gets to
We're
look at
coming
what we're
clean.
doing.
We're coming clean.
We're coming clean. I would say, just psychologically, the American public would say, "See, I really like the CIA. See, these guys really are, representing us."
I think that's way off base.
Okay, well, that's just my opinion. But see, I don't even think that's the reason. You want to hear my reason why I think they aren't going to do this, or they're trying to keep this information out?
Why they're going to keep it secret?
Right. You want my
Right.
opinion on this?
Yeah.
Okay. My feeling is that this goes way deeper, and that, um, and I think I've told you this. After World War II, Germany bombed into Stone Age, right? The Vatican assists 1 million Nazis, not just any old Nazi, but really nasty Nazis. Like, and the poster boy of this would be Werner von Braun, right? And so in America, we had a thing called Operation Paperclip, where we brought resources, scientists, engineers, bureaucrats, military folk from the Nazi Party, not just Germans, Nazis, real Nazis, into our government. And
Well, let me interrupt.
and Dorings, General Dorings, who ran the
Let me ask
intelligence.
you a question that I think is bearing on this.
Okay.
What actions flowed from those people that we needed to have been afraid of?
Okay, this guy Dorings, right? He was in charge of intelligence, military intelligence, in Russia, right? And he was going to be brought up in Nuremberg. But what's his name? The guy who was the two brothers, who one was the Secretary of State, the other was the Dulles brothers. They convinced Harry Truman that this guy knows everything about Russia. Russia's going to be our big enemy. We got to watch out for him. So let's bring him in. And that guy was with the Dulles brothers, started the CIA. Right.
Well, the point
So
I'm
the
making
CIA is 100% in its soul National Socialist. And what is a National Socialist but a fascist? What's a fascist? It's a governmental process that protects corporations. And so people like Westinghouse and GE and the Rockefellers and Exxon and you name it said yeah. And so that's one reason why they don't want this, right? The other really interesting reason is that the so Germany's bombed into Stone Age. These Nazis, through Operation Paperclip, come into our government, and not just 1,200 guys who go to New Mexico to work on rockets, but across the board, 70,000 Nazis came into our government. That's number one. Number two, the end of the war, Germany lost, but the Nazis won, because not only did we bring in 70,000 guys through Operation Paperclip, they spread out all over the place, to Brazil, to Argentina.
And what did they do? What was the impact they had on the world situation?
Basically, what they did was they were the folks who, funded and trained through Russia the people who were like the Bonhoeff gang, and who were the really nasty Arab terrorists in the 60s and 70s. Who?
PLO.
the PLO, and there were some other ones too that were pretty nasty. So anybody like that, the IRA, anything that could seed, you know, conflict and
So you think these came out of the Nazis?
yes, because that's part of their political thing to keep.
But I don't see. I never saw any reason to think the Nazis were involved with the PLO.
Right. So okay, but all I'm saying is that they wouldn't do it in a very above board kind of way. Everything would be very way down deep.
But I've never seen an indication that there's a
Okay, so
mysterious area over there, or I just never. I've been following this for a very long time, and it's never occurred to me.
okay, so where the Nazis also were very involved was Africa, right? And as the Western Europeans, France and England, were giving up their imperial places, they were putting folk in that represented within conflict the corporate entity. Nigeria is a great example, right? Has as much oil as Saudi Arabia, and they're nationalists, the people who were wanting to be George Washington of Nigeria, were basically assassinated, and basically criminals have been their president and governments ever since. And Nigeria is I mean, it's a mess the way they just drilled holes and pulled oil out and put pipes everywhere and destroyed their environment, their water, their air, their everything. They have the highest level cancer and poverty on the planet.
What are
So
we talking about?
this is all this Nazi guys and Kennedy.
Now, wait a minute, Al. Come on now.
And this is why the CIA won't release this paper, because Kennedy, he didn't just get whacked because he was going after CIA. He was going after the hidden hand. He gave this amazing speech at American University.
I know the speech slapped the system upside the head. I know that.
Right? And not just in America, across the board, right?
Okay, slapped the guys in charge, been making policy.
And not just in America, in the corporate world.
I didn't say that.
Right.
I said the guys have been used to making the policy.
Right.
He slapped them.
Right. And so when you go into seeing who took him out, it's all of the above, and all of the documents that they have on this would show that America itself has complicity with this unipolar transnational corporate state.
Obviously, he's got to have complicity with it. America's calling most of the shots in the public arena.
Well, in the public arena, they are just, they are the poster boy of this. Come on
now, give me a break.
Well, you wanted to know my opinion of why the documents won't come out and never see the.
What do you mean the Americans are the poster boy? What am I supposed to take from that?
Means that we're not in charge.
That we're being controlled.
Yeah. That's why our
well, I mean, you can make that accusation.
I mean, that's why our politicians are the best money can buy.
No, okay.
And that's why who's the Jewish organization that has more control over our Congress than almost any other entity?
What's that again now?
I said, what Jewish entity has more control over our politicians than almost any other entity?
Well, you have the NRA and you have the Israeli lobby, and
the Israeli lobby. I would say they are more politically powerful than the NRA. NRA has one subject: guns. Israel has many subjects. Whatever Israel's interests are, and they're not just.
Are you thinking Israel was part of the decision?
They are. Yeah.
To go after Kennedy.
Yep. That element of the Zionists, yes, because The Zionists are
Well,
Nazis.
see, that what this tells me is how you reach out and draw conclusions. It's like Mormonism. It's like you see it. You look and you see it. There it is. It's right in front of our face.
Okay. Well, you won't even look at it, so I don't
Well,
think.
I am looking at it.
No, you're not. You
exactly
always
looking at it.
you don't respond with any. I mean, I can go and I've been sending you tons of YouTube that back up everything I say from lots of different people.
Well, that's not true.
But I send you 2 or 3 every day, and
But it doesn't back up to me the hidden hand or the script.
well, have you been watching the guy, the Z guy with the beard, right?
Zahan, you mean?
Yes, right. Mhm.
Yeah, I've
Right.
seen several of his. I
Right.
think he's got a definite point of view. And I listened to the whole thing the other day, just about
So-
2 days ago.
So what he talks about China, how it's going to collapse. What do you think about that?
I don't know China well enough. I know there are
Well,
people that
he
saying
does
exactly
a very
the
good
opposite.
job of describing it and explaining it and giving you, statistics and showing you how it's not going to happen. It is happening.
Well, you might be right. What I'm telling you is there are people
And then
who
have you seen what
saying
he
the
said about Russia and that they really can't get out of this mess unless they do something way outside the box,
Well, no, I'm not arguing against that.
right? So
They're in a mess.
if
The
this
West
is
trying
so
to-
catastrophic
the West is trying
to
to do a regime change in Russia.
right, so and
That's
that's
what it's been about from the beginning.
right, and that's what he's talking about, and when you look at all the
So
because
wait a minute. Are you saying Zahan is talking about that?
yeah.
That the Americans are doing regime change in Russia?
No. What he's saying it's the hidden hand. I mean, he doesn't use that, but he says he says globalism, what we've experienced for the last 30 years or 20 something years, it was just a bait and switch to get all of their connective tissue into the world's governments to the point that they can pull the rug out from the population and get control of the planet. If you watch, this guy has been writing and talking about this for the last 15 years. I mean, he's got at least 100 YouTubes up there, if not more. He's got about 30 books, right?
We're talking about Peter Zahan. Right?
Yep, Peter Zayan. Yep, the guy with the beard, and he's very engaging in his discussion. Meaning he doesn't come off like a dry boned scholastic. He puts things into a perspective that pretty much anybody can understand.
Yeah, I've seen him having a definite point of view.
Yep.
And influenced by that point of view, and everything is consistent with, like I say, once you have a point of view, you make everything consistent with your point of view. That's why Catholics stay Catholics, Mormons stay Mormons, Baptists stay Baptists, because it's very
Yeah, but
human.
he's not talking about religion.
I don't mean, I'm not saying
He's not coming he's not coming from an
idea.
ideological point of view. He's coming from facts, figures. All his discussions are about facts and figures.
Statistics are an easy way to lie,
No shit.
Just because you cite certain facts and situations doesn't mean that you're right. I mean, the way it's like Mormonism or Catholicism is everything becomes consistent. You can go through your entire life and everything's consistent with it. Everything's consistent with what you knew from day 1 to day 100. That's the way I use the comparison.
So everything you say is you are consistent with everything you say. Everything you say comes from your belief, and yet you everything you discuss you come from a point where you're right and everyone's wrong.
No, no, that's not accurate.
I never say what you say is bullshit. You're always saying what I say is
It doesn't
bullshit.
mean that everything I say is right. What I say is you're on flimsy ground, evidence wise.
Okay. So, you know what the real big interesting issue is?
What's that?
Is that all of this is going on, and why the Kennedy files won't come out, and there are other files that need to come out that aren't coming out either, is that early on in the 19th century, science was, getting its fingers into everything, and they kind of realized, and Tesla brought it out in a big way, that there is unlimited. This planet is a planet of abundance, and that when allowed to be shared amongst everyone, and not in communism. I mean, everyone can do their own thing, but there is unlimited electricity. Do you know what unlimited electricity would do to this planet? And not only unlimited electricity, environmentally safe. And not just one method, but a good 100 methods. And if they really expanded the research on it, there'd probably be thousands, which would mean we would be living in a world like Star Trek. We'd be out there in the stars all over the place,
There
right?
work for that hidden hand.
Right. And so that technology, but see, that technology, it's not the hit, you can go look that technology up. You can see where people research that technology. What's his name's Donald Trump's Uncle John was one of the leading researchers of that. And so Donald Trump knows about all of this in a big way, right? When Nikola Tesla died, the FBI is waiting outside his door at New Yorker hotel. And as soon as he keels over, they go in and they take all of his documents. And the scientists they brought with them to look at it, yeah, take this one. Oh, we can leave that one for the Russians, because the Russians were out in the hallway. They were going in second, and the scientist that was there was John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. So Donald Trump knows more about this than virtually most anybody else, And
Father's brother.
his father's brother. Yep. And his father, what was really interesting, was one of the heads of the American Boon in America. You know what the American Boon was?
American what?
Boon.
Boom.
Yeah, the American Boon. It's a German word. That gives it a hint. It was the American Nazi Party. There were 3 million members. It was a political party in the United States. Most people don't realize up until 1953, there were 8 viable political parties in the United States. And we were more like Israel, meaning, there was the Labor Party, the Workers' Party, the Communist Party, the Socialist Party. There was a Black Party, and there was another kind of 2 other parties that dealt with.
Did they run president?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And
Who'd they run against? They were like the Greens or.
Yes, exactly, like the Independents. It's like.
They didn't have much impact. They were there,
But
without much
they
impact.
did have impact in that there were so many of them that this party got 3 or 4 guys as senators. This party got 12 people as governors. This party got 20 people in Congress. And so the Democrats or Republicans couldn't just push anything through. So they had to make deals. And that's how the unions became legal, because they had to make deals.
Kind of like Israel.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's kind of like Israel. What do they call that when they form their governments? They
Parliament.
no. But there's a thing when you bring all those different
Coalition.
and that's what America was for about 60 years, a coalition, and that's when we were probably the most successful at it, and that was one of the reasons why the depression occurred, because the really rich people didn't like this coalition thing. They wanted to be, they couldn't buy those all those union guys off and all that, and they didn't like being forced to have Hart-Hartley Act, and didn't like not being able to have a what is it when you own everything in a specific industry, like when Rockefeller owned,
Monopoly.
what was that?
Monopoly.
What?
Monopoly.
Monopoly. They wanted to have monopolies, right? And so that was part of, I mean, America's economy is a boom bust one. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down, right?
Capitalism.
Right. That's capitalism. Up and down, up and down, up and down, right? But the Depression was made worse than it should have been. It should have just been one of those down periods, a recession rather than a depression. We really, until the 1930s, we did not have a depression. Now you look at in 1972 when everyone went, New York City went bankrupt, that political part of our politic went bankrupt for 20 years. We didn't have a depression. We had a recession that lasts 20 years, but not for everybody. And that's how recessions go. Recession occurs. Not everyone has as a bad a day as somebody else, and that's part of capitalism too. And but what we have gone to, because we've had, so the 72, 72 to 92 was that depression. And then in 99, we had the dot-com bubble, which really, whacked. One of the reasons why Al Gore was happy to let George Bush become president, because under Clinton and Gore was the only time that we did not have a deficit. Did you know that? We had no. We did. We had no deficit.
Yeah, I think I did know that.
And that's the only time, because that was a period when we really didn't have a real war. We had a little skirmishes here and there, but no real war. And basically what Bill Clinton did was he decontrolled everything. Ronald Reagan was considered to be, the guy who was going to decontrol everything. No, the guy who decontrolled everything was Bill Clinton, right? And I mean, he got rid of Glass-Steagall. That's why we had 2008. He got rid of.
Why did Gore not mind losing?
Because he knew that America was headed into a shithole, and he's not a great, he's not a. He's a poser. That's what Al Gore is. So by not having to be president, when he's not being president, he not going to have to work really hard. He could just go around and give speeches and tell people he invented the internet.
Come on now. Well, I mean, the egos in people. Been a politician his whole life. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
No, but if you ever looked at Al Gore, he was not the smartest pencil in the box.
And not to be smart, just even the dumber he is, the more my case is right.
Anyway,
I mean, how can you draw conclusions like that? I don't.
Because he said it himself.
What did he say?
So
I didn't want to be president.
no,
because I'm
no,
in
no,
trouble
that's
with
not what he
something.
said. He said, "Oh, I wanted to be president, but once I got my legs in it, having to run a campaign and do all of that, I didn't like that. Right? Once I saw what I was getting into, I didn't like that. And then once this came up, it's like, oh wow, I'm really gonna have to fight for it. And then when he saw that the powers that be wanted George and Dick Cheney there, he said, I'm just gonna let him do it because he it was like a light switch. He said, okay, because it wasn't until the Supreme Court basically put George and Dick into the seats of president and vice president that and he went along with it because he could have fought legally. He won by 7 million votes. He could have said, okay, let's really recount everything.
But he didn't really want the president.
But no, he wanted it when he first was running for it. But as that process went on and on and on, he realized, I don't want to do this. I will have the notoriety, right? I can say that instead of fighting it for the betterment of, and that's what he said, for the betterment of the country, I'm just going to say they won, right? And I will agree it, and I'll, be there when they swear them in. And so, but later, so he went on the book tour. He wrote a couple books. He started, going on, and he was looking for the thing he could, be his Garland. He was talking about being the inventor of the internet, and that definitely didn't work, and a few other things, and they didn't work. But once, you know, global warming came up, oh wow, and people started talking about carbon taxes. You know what carbon tax is? You know what it would do to the average person? Put him in jail. It would be very similar to what China has as their social um, rating, right? It would control everything about your life. And he's number one guy pushing that. He's a Davos guy if there ever was one. So that's why he went for it, and they gave him a few more steps up in the ladder of the hidden hand. I mean, he's definitely not a high table guy, but he is definitely a poster child of it. That's for sure.
Well, you might be right. I don't know.
So I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I just put out these things because I see patterns, and I don't say they're right. I'm just saying we should look at this. Just like Ike gave that speech. You should go listen to that speech a few times, and really like listen to it sentence by sentence. And the other interesting thing about it,
Henry's speech or Ike's speech?
Ike's speech.
I've listened to both of them three times.
But I mean, like really, trying to dissect every sentence.
No, I understand he was challenging the system.
Right. And what's really interesting, he does this. He never made a peep about this until 2 hours before Kennedy became president. Right. He waited that long. Right. And
Well, it was a farewell speech.
no, it was more than a farewell speech. And no
It was
presidents.
a farewell speech.
No presidents has ever done what he did.
It was a farewell speech, and he had something to say.
But no other president did that. He's the only
Did
guy
what?
in presidential history has done that.
Done what? Had a farewell?
No, had a speech 2 hours before the president becomes president, and had it.
I don't understand the significance of that. Seems to me fairly lot. I mean, not hard to imagine that he had 2 hours to go. He wanted something to say to the country, and he went on television and said it.
So how come he didn't do it the week before?
Well, I don't know. Why would he do it a week before?
Well, and again, there has been no other president that has had a farewell speech. They've given speeches, um, but up until they're president,
Well, Eisenhower had a long career, general, war, president. I don't find it hard to imagine that had words he wanted to impart to the country in a farewell speech. I don't.
no other president has ever done that.
Okay. And because
And not
I
only
don't know
no,
that that's
not only
relevant, but
has no other president done that, but no one has ever spoke to the military. Hey, and in that sentence, there is no other thing more threatening to the welfare, life, and liberty of American citizens than the American military industrial complex. He's saying these guys are more dangerous than the Russians.
both Kennedy and Eisenhower said that.
But Ike said it in that way, and it was so. And he coined the phrase military-industrial complex, right? Kennedy, because there were so many different component parts of it, he gave speeches about the component parts, but he never, Eisenhower basically came as close to anybody to other than Stan Lee of Marvel to speak about the hidden hand. Kennedy gave his speech about secret societies, but that was a more coached kind of thing. Eisenhower named it, and he spoke to how its power. He said it takes more money away from the average citizen than anything else, and it gives nothing back. It is done itself. It's dug itself into every community. It has built factories all across the country to build political favor. He went on and on about how it's threatening the life, liberty. For every aircraft carrier, that could be 5 hospitals. For every bomber, that could be 2 high schools. He just took it apart in a way that no one ever has, and no one ever did, and no one ever has since. Right?
I know what you're saying is accurate right now. What are your conclusions are you drawing?
That he, up until he became president, he was a general. So generals
What
and military.
conclusions are you drawing about him laying this out on his departure?
Okay. He wanted to do 2 things. He wanted to get all of that out so he would never have to deal with it again. So he could go back to Illinois or wherever he came from
Golf.
and just play golf and play with the.
Well, that doesn't drive with me. So he could go play golf.
Well,
I mean, that seems silly.
Well, no, it's not so. He had it. Meaning, after he made that speech, he was no longer on the stage. He didn't go around giving speeches. People would see him and ask him questions, and he would say a few things, but he never, after that speech, had anything to do
What
with.
do you draw from that? I mean, what conclusions?
What I'm drawing from that was that he was a righteous guy, and he wanted to go out with saying, "Listen, yes, I was a soldier most of my life, and then the last 20 years I've been a politician, and I did my best, and in that process, I have seen this occur, and because I was here mostly to serve, I'm going to do my best in this last 2 hours of being president," and this is why he did it in the last 2 hours, "to tell you this," right? And it was a presidential speech, meaning everyone's getting ready to watch TV to see Jack get inaugurated, right? And he gave his speech around 10 a.m. right? And then Jack got inaugurated like noon or 1 o'clock. Gave him enough time to put his tux and get over to the Capitol and shake Jack's hand. But he wanted to go out, Mimi, and playing golf, which is what at that time what he liked to do more than anything
And
else.
that's what he wanted, was to
Right.
not be bothered.
Right.
So he could play golf.
Yep.
Be with his
Well, it took so he could have a life, not so much just play golf. But I mean, the one thing someone said, "What do you enjoy most in your life?" And he said, "Well, but besides my family, playing golf." And this is when he was president. They didn't say, "Don't you love the thrill of being?" No, he said, "No." And that's another thing he said. I became president to serve, not to be powerful.
But I don't understand. Are you drawing a conclusion here about Eisenhower? It seems like to me it's pretty logical. He served as president, general president.
Yeah, but
and
most
that's
you
on the way
name
out.
since him and since Jack got whacked, virtually every person who's a politician is about their ego and the power and the prestige and the perks they get. I don't know a single politician who is
So
really.
so I mean, you did a rare thing,
Yeah,
and you don't know other people who've done it. So what? I don't get it. What are you saying?
I'm just
I don't know anybody else who's done that. Therefore, what?
I was just answering your question. You said, why did he do it? What's he just
Well,
and you
that's a
kept saying
logical thing.
you saying I can't believe he just went to go play golf. No, he had done everything he could to serve his country, and he wanted to finish with this because he saw that as the biggest threat, not Russia,
And why are we talking about this right now? Why are we talking about
because the
Eisenhower?
biggest threat to the world, not just the United States, is this powerful transnational fascist state. And it is based as a military industrial entity. And so when he said, as he said, military industrial complex, he should have added military industrial media, education, and banking complex, because that's what it is. And
how do you draw the line from Eisenhower to the fact we have a military industrial complex that's out of control? How do you draw that line? What are you saying? I don't get it.
What line do you want me to draw?
We have a military industrial complex and Eisenhower's speech.
So what are you wanting to know?
I don't understand. How is the speak relative to what we're confronting now?
Well, what we're confronting is global. I mean, we're
But why the speech? Why the speech?
well, because it is the backbone of what the threat is. Meaning, and why I say it's what's going on in the Ukraine is a soap opera, and both Vladimir, it's the war of the two Vlads, the stand-up comedian and Putin, they're both, and when I say they're reading a script, it's not so much that someone hands everything out of their mouth is like, they're reading it. But it is, someone is handing them a script and they are reading it off the teleprompter, blah, blah, blah. But they have, just by being in that milieu of politics, world politics, they're being used. They're just a puppet. That's what I'm saying. And the most visible, like I don't know if you've ever seen a puppet show. There is a little proscenium, right? And the puppets are out there dancing. You see the strings going up in the air, and you don't quite see the puppeteers. You can see their hands, maybe, right? You can see them, but you don't see their faces, right? And so that's what we're experiencing. We're experiencing the puppets on the stage, the Vlads, and the poor people who are dying, and everybody in between. You see
this is your basic theme in life.
Yeah, pretty much.
We're puppeteers. It's been going on since Babylon.
Right. And what the real thing is that the individual, the only way this is going to change is when the individual person takes upon themselves, like Ike did, is to speak truth to power, right? And to not be swayed by your opinion, to step back. And, it took Ike 50 years to get to the point where he could make that speech. He couldn't do it as a lieutenant out of the military academy. He couldn't do it as a captain or a major or a colonel or a general or
Well, he hadn't learned it at that point.
right, meaning he was going through that process of learning all those things, right? And then being head of basically the all of the you know armies gathered to fight Germany, so he had even more observation. And then once they won and they're in there and they're occupying and he is seeing all of the stuff underneath, and he's seeing the Vatican usher a million of the nastiest Germans, but they have money, they have power, they have um, expertise and technology and resources at their behalf that are spread around the world, and that's why um, you know one reason why Japan is in the position they are today, and the same with Germany. Germany is smaller, but Japan is the third largest economy in the world, and they're a little teeny island, right? They have no resources. How'd they do that?
Discipline, I assume.
No. In their, so they had a good 20 years before they bombed Pearl Harbor to basically take over the Pacific. They took over China, they took over Southeast Asia, they took over, you name it, right? And in that process, they unearthed ungodly amounts of gold and bling, resources, things you can, you know, buy, invest, and they had that at the end of the war. They still had that. Yes, the home islands were annihilated by B-29s for a year and a half, um, and their military abilities were taken out, so they couldn't hold their empire anymore. But they had an unbelievable stash of cash, and not like paper money, but gold, diamonds, you name it, they had it. And because they conquered all these places, and they took out all of these, like China had been an empire for thousands of years. They had a lot of hordes of capital all over the place, and they never spent it. And but they had it, and the Japanese took it away. And the same with other places that they went in. So they made a deal with the United States, and that's how the United States, had a number of things going for it. They were hard to attack because they were in this gigantic, um, place with oceans on either side, and they had all the oil, all the food, all the manufacturing of the world that they needed, right? But they had limited essence of capital, and that's one of the problems of America's. That's why we have the boom bust thing. I mean, if we had a ton of, if we had the cash that Japan had, we'd never have a worry about inflation or deflation or boom and bust. And because we could ride it out, right? And so they made a deal with the United States and England, basically, that they would make this new world order, but they were number three. No matter whoever, whatever else was on, they're number three. And by doing that, they would take their industry and become industrialist within the capitalist sense, and not become a militarist, fascist state, which Japan always, I mean, that's what they were, with the emperor and that, because, kind of that's what it was. And so they said, okay, we won't take our abilities and go back to, becoming a military state. America will become your ally. We'll have a defensive force and you will be the umbrella over us, right? And that has worked for Japan for the last 70 years. Now, America is pulling back. The only reason why globalization worked was because America's Navy protected the seas so everyone could trade without getting attacked by pirates, right? Well, America is pulling out. And Donald Trump was the heralder of that. But it was on the things to do, right? The Cold War ended. We don't have this war until we have another real threat. We're going to pull back, right, and let the rest of the world do its thing. And 90% of the rest of the world will sink into depression and really have a bad day because we spent that 70 years of semi globalization and then the 30 years of real globalization where we took everyone's shit, right? And now we're like Japan. We've got all of this stuff that we're sitting pretty. And Japan still has all its bling, right? And it has reconstituted its industry to be, the third. And technologically, I would say Japan, it's like the United States and Japan are the technological leader. They are like partners, right? And whether America or Japan is a little bit ahead of the other, one does a little bit more than the other one does, and this and that, right? But they are basically partners. And now that America is pulling away, Japan is going to reassert itself as it will probably be after China collapses because its army is more of a paper tiger than Russia is. And Japan, they still are samurai, and their navy, they have destroyers that they didn't go into the aircraft carrier because they already experienced. They know that the problem with our aircraft carriers is no matter how well defended up, they're sitting ducks, you know, and they're very expensive sitting ducks, and we're just making them more and more expensive. So they went for destroyers and submarines, right? Because they're both fast and both hard to hit, and armed them to the teeth. And even though they say they're not nuclear, because they've been the only country ever bombed with a nuclear weapon, other than Iraq and Afghanistan, because we use depleted uranium shells, and we've turned Afghanistan and Iraq into a radioactive, hinterland. Anyway, Japan, anyone who has any kind of intelligence would know that's a hornet's nest that no one should touch, right? And they have missiles, and like I said, they have a ton of reactors. They have a ton of plutonium, and they have the technological. I'm sure they got atomic bombs, and they don't have to test them to let people know that they got them. They have the industrial ability to make them, and I'm sure they've made them because they've experienced them, and they have their own missiles that put their own. They don't go to the United States or Europe to launch satellites. They do it. They have ICBMs, and they have like I said, no one's going to mess with those guys. And so the way the world is painted is not really the way the world is, right? And it's going to become the world is going to have a massive, you know, reset, and it's not going to be reset in the same way it was because we've had other massive resets before, and they never were, the closest thing to a reset where we kind of went into the same thing that was going on before was when the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire. One week everyone's pagan, next week they're bishops and cardinals and popes. So in the next five years, just think what 2019 was, right? Did you conceive that anything that has happened in the last 3 years would have happened? Not even close, right?
Well, a lot of the Israel stuff and Iran stuff you would have expected.
But not COVID. Not COVID knocking the whole world on its ass, closing all the factories, destroying the supply chain. The global economy that we were experiencing in 2019 will never come back. Hasn't come back so far. And everyone's scrambling to try and make their shit for themselves. And the only two people who really got that undercover is the United States and Japan. And what people don't really, did you ever read NAFTA? Did you ever read that law? Did you ever read that international piece of paper? Do you know what NAFTA really did?
Will you tell me?
It literally made Canada, the United States, and Mexico one country. Literally.
We're now one country with Mexico and Canada.
Yep. We and since Bill Clinton did that one. And when
so how has that manifested itself in the last 6 months or year?
Well, I mean, what has it done in the last 20 years since Bill Clinton was president? It's basic.
What do you point to that says I'm right over the past year?
Who's right?
You're saying that we're one country. You're saying that we're now one country,
right.
And I'm saying, where do you point to?
All you have to do is look at how things are manufactured in those three countries. Cars, TVs, toaster ovens, you name it, are manufactured, and parts.
Okay, well,
and parts in all of those three are, if you have a toaster oven, this part was made in Mexico, this part was made in Canada, this part was made in America. Then those things were sent over to part of America and then sent back to Mexico to be finalized.
We're not one country foreign policy.
And oh, sure we are. And that you look at all our defense things. I mean, Canada, has the DO line, has our missiles, has our air bases, has our everything. And what's really interesting about the military that is in Canada, it's our military there, but it is under operations with Canada. Meaning we have bases all around the world. We have 900 bases everywhere, right? And that's part of our our economic hegemony. That military is not to protect us, but it's to protect our economy, our corporations, really, not our economy, but our corporations. And in Canada, our military's there.
Hey, Al, let me get you to hold on a second. I'm going to take this call.
Okay. Come on, stop it. Okay. So how many of you guys watch? Oh, there's still one. I guess it's Mr. AI. So what do you think, AI? What happened here? There we go. Anyway, how long are we? 2 hours and 24 minutes. How much time we got left here? 12. Let's talk 12. We're about 5-10 minutes. So, okay, I'll close the show up. So that was interesting. So that guy there is what is called a scholastic. Right? He thinks he knows, his political science. He knows a few politicians. So, his worldview is, whatever he's believing at the moment. And, he doesn't read too many. He's a scholastic, doesn't really read books, and neither do scholastics. And that's kind of why I called him up and put him on the show, because I wanted to. Well, no one else was coming in, so I thought I'd just give him a buzz. And we covered a lot of stuff there, right? And pretty much anything that doesn't agree to his, because he used to be a Mormon, and he used to be a real Mormon where he really believed in the golden underpants. And then, he went off to, Mormon college, but it wasn't in Mormon country. I mean, it was still in Utah, but there were, not, he was totally, when he was a young kid, when he was in high school, he was totally, there wasn't anything that wasn't Mormon, right? And his family, he comes from a very affluent family, right? He never had to worry about anything. He never had to worry about being hungry. He never had to worry about anything, right? So he really has no real empathy for anybody, right? I succeed, So he has a trust, I work hard, and he is a nice guy. And he wants, he's part of Plowshare, and he wants, peace, and he wants, but he can't really, because I've known this guy 20 years. I've been observing him, and pretty much, I think some people can get irritated with my presence, and that I love everyone. Right? I've had lots of women in my life, and they would get upset with me because they say, I've been married twice, but all the other serious relationships I've had about 8 what I would call committed relationships. I mean, I live with somebody, and we shared a domicile. I didn't, I didn't fool around. I didn't, and when I'm involved with someone, I'm committed, right? And that's why women love me, because I'm committed. I can be strange, I'm like pretty not right, but I also do my best. So if I go into someone's house, or we have a domicile, well, I am not like I'm 50-50 in this room. No, I am 150%. If I'm with a Because if I'm in with a woman, that woman is really something special, right? Really, and however you want to look at, however special you want to talk about it, and so I don't take advantage. I don't take, um, you know, just take it for granted. None of the above. I am there to be 100% empathetic, feeling what you're up. I'm up for being part of that domicile, right? So, but I'm sweet and nice to everybody, right? And so, you know, my second wife never was, she knew that all she was, her experience with men was that they were dogs. They're always fooling around, always that, right? And never really being respectful or attentive to her needs, right? Well, man, I was totally respectful and totally, attentive to everything, right? And I really never demanded much, you know. I really demanded nothing, right? And so my second wife was like, and she was a triple Aries. She was like, she hated everybody. She loved me. And that's was good enough for me. I love her. I still love her, right? So after she died, there's this little part in my heart, how I deal with her not being with me. It's that she's always with me. Just like God is always with me, just like Jesus is always with me, but not in a religious way, but in a theological way, right? Right there in my little heart, right? And so, um, And my first wife, my training wife, I was, totally that way too. But from the first time I met her on the subway. We had a nice little interlude, and that was kind of fun. And then I got off the train thinking, I don't know her name. I didn't get a phone number. I have no idea. This is a city of 17 million. I'll never see her again, right? I get off the train at Marcy Avenue and Broadway, and all the Hasids run off. And when I got off the train, normally what I did was I would stand, here's the door, I would stand over in this little, right over here, and not like in the doorway, right? The doorway off, and all the Hasids would run off, and then I would, as the flow, and I would, step off the train and not be, trampled by the Hasids. And then I would wait on the platform until they all, stumbled down and crushed each other on the staircase going down. So I would wait. So when I stepped off the train, and the herd was already heading for the steps down to Broadway. This is the elevated train, the J and the M. And it comes over the Williamsburg Bridge into Williamsburg and then keeps going towards Coney Island. So anyway, and the rest of the folks who were on the train, they were mostly Black and Hispanic because they kind of lived on that. So I was like the only Anglo, that's what they would call me, Anglo. Anyway, so I get off and I'm waiting there, and I kind of just turn over, and there she is. So she went into the next car. I said, I'll never see her again. But, I look at, oh, look, there you are. And so she goes, yeah, I didn't know. I said, yeah, I didn't get your name or phone number. She giggled. I said, well, let's go take a walk. Let's go see the neighborhood. So we went down, turned on Roebling's. I went to Patsy's Pizza, bought her a couple slices of pizza. And then I went to Gottlieb's bakery, got her a black and white cookie. You ever have one of these? Wow. And then we walked down, and she goes, well, I go that way. I said, okay, not a problem. And see, all the way down there where the East River is, 2 streets up, that's 11th Street, right? Go over one and then down to where the building takes up the whole block. That's my building, right? And the loading platform's in the middle of the street. You go up those steps. There's a big hole in the building. There's a doorbell. Push the doorbell. The elevator will show up. There's no gate, no nothing. Just stand back. Don't fall in, right? And the elevator will show up, and it's just a floor and a ceiling, and 4 metal beams, and there'll be a big black man. His name's Kirby. It's a super, right? And just tell him, I want to see Al, and he'll take you right to me, right? So we got to that place. She went that way. I went this way. And it was kind of, right about now, maybe middle of February, end of February, maybe March. Not quite spring, not quite really terrible. All the snow storms had, there wasn't snow in the streets. There's no real ice anywhere. Anyway, so, I walked back to my place, hit the bell. Kirby came down, brought me up. And even though this building, and it was it was a Hasidic factory building, but the Hasids actually made the first Chinese food that was sold in supermarkets, whatever, Chungking, I think. So there's a bunch of buildings stuck together. The loading platform, that elevator, went to virtually 95% of all of those buildings, right? You get there and let you off either this way or that way or this way. But where I lived on top of one of those buildings, and it was 1 floor above all the others. All the other buildings had 7 floors. I was on the 8th floor, right, of this one building, right? And that building was a gigantic building. It was 17,000. Each floor was 17,000 square feet, right? And then there was another little teeny building on the end of that, right? That was the first building built there, and that too was 8 stories high. It was built by this Dutch guy who was a mason, and he was a big, he had all these ships coming in from Europe. So he was the highest building in New York at that time. So he had this telescope. He would be looking for his boats coming in. Right? So anyway, so I had to check. First I went through the 17,000 square foot part of that floor, and then there was a fire door, and I went into 3,000 square feet, and on top, because he was a mason, he had a pyramid on top of that building that had really beautiful Masonic stained glass windows. And so I basically, rented that, and I was there for 2 years, before Donna and I met on the subway. Anyway, so and I had these windows facing in every direction. I could see all the way to Statue of Liberty. I saw all of Manhattan from Statue of Liberty to 59th Street Bridge. I had an amazing view of Manhattan, and I had these windows, 30 of them facing there. And in this other building, it was a little to the side of it, I had this one corner that had windows facing north, and I could also see south, and behind me was west. And this other little part I could see across, right? So, and I built in that corner because I had two windows on either side, and I built it. There were these pipes, so I built a little stage about a step up, right? So I found this table that had thing cut out. It was about the size of a ping pong table, and it had a half moon cut out in the middle. So I stuck it right in the corner, and I could have my nice little chair. And I put these I found these little drawer things on the street, and they fit right under. That was the stand of my my ping pong table, and I had a nice rolly round chair that I found on the street, and I could sit there and I could type away. I could write like that. And so, Don and I, go our separate ways, and I go there and I open up one of those little drawers and I pull out, because Kirby was growing herb in the basement of these buildings, right? That was his. I mean, yes, he was super, fixed everything, ran everything, but his main thing was the cannabis in the basement. And he liked me because, he had a couple of light bulbs, and I went and got him some sodium vapor lamps, and he really started growing, and I got him, into hydroponics and stuff like that. So he, I never was without, right? So anyway, and really good stuff, right? So I was rolling this nice little bone. I rolled three. I put one in my mouth, and I started smoking half, and then I went over to my kitchen, and I took all these sewing machine tables and made counters in my kitchen, and I had a nice electric stove and a big refrigerator, dishwasher even, and a big stainless steel sink. All this stuff I got off the street, right? And Kirby helped me. He had a truck and a hand truck, and I would say, Kirby, let's go get some appliances. Right? Yeah, my hot water. I got everything off the street, right? So I'm living pretty good. And I have these dock heaters in the ceilings. I mean, really, could keep you. I had a couple gas ones, and the ones where I really sat were electric. So it would really hit me and toast me up no matter how cold it was inside that place. And it would light the place up too. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and I got the dock heater on my head at half glow, and I make myself a nice pot of tea, and I make myself a grilled cheese sandwich. And because Mr. Gottlieb made the best black bread and had goat cheese, and ooh baby, and horseradish, yum yum yum, and a couple black and white cookies, and a nice little glass of wine, right? So I put it on the tray, take it over there, eating my little grilled cheese, and drinking my wine, and sipping on my hot tea, and then boom, 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 yeah, Kirby. So I come up the stage, I walk over there, I open the big fire door, and there's Big Kirby and Little Don. And he's got this little grin on his face. This little girl, she's looking for you, Al. And then she just kind of walks in like she's just going into, Oz, and she's like looking all around and her mouth was open. She's looking. And Kirby giggles and hands me a half OZ. This is really good stuff. Get you going, you know what I mean? So, okay, because he had different grades, You want to really eat something, you want to get horny, you want to do this, you want to think, you want to work. He had every kind of taste. He was like the old crone, but with cannabis. So he, he giggles and he walks away. I close the thing. I turn around to her. She goes, "This is where you live?" I said, "Yep." She goes, "You have a kitchen?" And she walks over to the kitchen. You got a stove, and she opens her, and you got a refrigerator with food in it. I got, yep, and a dishwasher. Yep, and over there's a washer and a dryer. I go, you have a you have a bathroom with a toilet, and look at that bathtub. It's a swimming pool, and you got a shower. And then she looks over and she goes, "And you have a dark room." And she starts bawling. I go, "Honey, what's wrong?" Because I live in a storage bin that's 6 foot by 6 foot, and there's one light bulb and no windows, and I have to shit in the bucket. I go, "We really have no place to live?" "No. But you can live here." "What?" "Yeah, you can live here. I mean, you got that big long space you walk through, that's 17,000 square feet. It's full of boxes of sweaters. You can make yourself a house, and it'll be toasty warm." And and I said, "Do you like marijuana?" "Do I? I haven't smoked in 5 months." And I go, "Oh." So I take that little herb stock that Kirby said, "This will really get you going." He is like pointing to her. And so I rolled 3 joints of that. I said, "Here, honey, have one of these." And she, "This is amazing. Man. Where did you get this?" I said, "I can't tell you." "This is, I've never, ooh, yeah, I like, ooh." And she's not handing it over to me. So I light one up and she goes, "Oh, I didn't, but you have," I said, I lived in Jamaica, all the Rosses, we don't pass the marijuana. We all have our own joints. And then I said, "You hungry?" "Oh boy, am I ever." And I said, here's half of a grilled cheese." "Wow, that is amazing." I said, "Yeah, I'll make you another one." And I got some really great soup. So I put the soup, I took it out of the fridge, nice escarole, chicken, carrots, onions, potatoes, put it on the bubble, made another grilled cheese, gave her a glass of wine. She smelled it. "You got another one of these?" Well, we, by the time we finished soup and I sat at our table with an amazing view, and she's just, and she can't believe it, right? And so I said, "Why don't you come upstairs? You have an upstairs?" I said, "Yeah." So I take her up this big staircase that goes up to the pyramid, and I had built a platform that you looked out in all 4 directions from this platform. That was my bed, was way up there, right? And I didn't build a staircase up there because it's a pyramid. So the floor was 24 by 24, but as you went up, it got smaller and smaller. So up there, the majority of it was the platform that you slept on, and I made it out of steel studs. I don't know if you know what they are, but they're these light, flimsy things that you make sheetrock walls out of. Because they're cheaper and lighter and easier. Meaning, if you were trying to make a wall out of wooden 2x4s, you could maybe do 100 feet of a wall in a day. With steel studs, you could do 1,000 feet. I mean, they invented steel studs for the World Trade Center. That's where I kind of learned about it. And all the holes for the cables were already cut and all those kind of things. Anyway, if you put it, and they're very flimsy. They're very flimsy this way, but they have 2 sides that if you put sheetrock on one side, sheetrock on the other side, it's very structurally strong. And then if you take a steel stud and screw them together to make like an I-beam, then they're really strong, right? So that's what I did, and I made the platform, and I used, this special kind of plywood that's really structurally, laterally strong, and only half, it's as strong. This half inch of this stuff is as strong as 1 inch of regular plywood, right? Which they make boats out of and stuff. So, you know, so I had this platform, and it hung out, and then I had cables going up to beams, and I had a wooden beam going this way, right? And I made that like an I beam too. And so it was very, very strong this way. You could put a ton of weight on top this way. It was a little wobbly going this way, right? But how often am I doing this way? Not much, right? But to get up there, I had a 12-foot A ladder, and you had to go up all the way to the top and step on the top of the ladder and go from there onto the platform. And it was like maybe almost a foot difference, right? So, the top of the ladder is about that big. So your foot's on that, and then you have to step on, into the platform. And getting into the platform is pretty easy, but going down, because you kind of have to go backwards and step into like air, and have your foot find the top. And it's a ladder. If you hit the ladder too much on the sideways, whee, right? So it's pretty, anyway. So and I have a big couch and another one of these ping pong tables of writing, and also, but that was more my when I would formulate devices. I had shelves with all kinds of stuff, electrical stuff to make things, right? Because I made lots of. This is in the day when I worked for a number like Tony Two Toes and Bobby Bentnos, who owned peep shows, right? And all these peep shows, the girl would be in the middle, surrounded by guys in little booths, and they put these coins, not money, but coins that they would buy, 10 coins for $20, and you put a coin in the thing, and it would come up, and you would watch the girl do her thing, right? And you could put 2 coins in, and the intercom would work, and you could talk dirty to her, and she'd talk dirty back to you. Put 4 coins in, and you could, scoot your seat over to this little door that had put 4 things. It would drop down, and she could put her hand in to manipulate parts of you, right? So these things were like built in the 20s, right? So that little thing that you put the coins in were built in the 20s, and they wore out, and no one was making these things. So, Bobby Bentnos, he said, can you make stuff like this? And I took one home and played with it. I said, well, how much would you pay for a device like this? Brand new, that I guarantee will never break down for at least 5 years. He said, I'll give you $3,000. I said, okay, I can make as many of these things as you want. And this is 1976. So $3,000 in 1976, pretty good. But he was making $100,000 a week out of this little box. So that was pretty good for him, because he couldn't find anybody. And Mike Pinelli said, oh, you should talk to my godson. All right. So I did that. So that was one of my major, endeavors. And so anyway, so she's coming in, she sees all these like devices and stocks of little gizmos and widgets and transformers and dials and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so she's like, so we get on the couch, and I bring up that, and she seems, we were talking, when we were eating and smoking, and I have a great, unbelievable stereo. I got out of a disco. I mean, speakers like you couldn't believe, and she loved to dance, so we were dancing, and she was having a great time and getting higher and getting frisky and squeezing me here and there and letting me, and we were kind of kissing while we were dancing, and then I said, "Oh, let me show you the pyramid." Pyramid. So we went up there, and then we really got frisky on the couch, and then she said, "Where do you sleep?" And I said, "Stand over here. Look up there." She goes, "Up there." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Those skylights." I said, "Yeah, it's a pretty amazing view. You want to see it?" And she scampered up that thing like a cat and just ding jumped in the bed. And she, "Oh, this is such great." I had some of the first memory foam. I mean, it was like comfy up there. She said, "I like this." And she's like bouncing around on it. And I'm watching her bouncing. I'm going, "Well, I never bounced like that." And it's still hanging up there. So maybe if we bounce together, we won't die. Because this thing was right over the staircase. If that thing ever collapsed, not only would it fall 12 feet, but it would go straight down the staircase another 30 feet, which, I don't think that would have been good. So, amongst sharp steel studs and plywood and bits, no, it wouldn't have been good. So, anyway, she goes, "Come on up." So I come up, and by the time I get up there, she is naked as a jaybird. And we spend the rest of, and I brought a few things and a little carafe of wine and a few things, some black and white cookies, and that I had in my stash up there. And so she was, I inaugurated. I never had anybody up there. Right? It was just my little sleeping loft. And we knocked boots until it got dark, and then we fell asleep. And then I woke up, and she was like curled up like a cat, and she just had this little smile on her face. And so I let her be, and I went down and made breakfast. Made coffee, real good coffee. I actually had a cappuccino machine I got out of a restaurant. And the smell of really good coffee. And I made her an omelet and a few other things, and got some other little baked goods, and made some really nice croissants and some of these savory biscuits. And so I cooked it all up, and I put it up on the table looking out on Manhattan, and I put a tablecloth, and and she came down in her undies and was like, "Breakfast." And I said, "Aren't you cold?" And she goes, "Yes." And so I got her this big coat, put it on her. She goes, "Oh, yes." And we sat there, and she goes, Can you fill up that bathtub?" I said, "Can I ever?" Really, really, really hot water, right? And she finishes, and she comes in, and I have my robe on. I don't really have anything underneath me. I'm a kind of a nudist at heart, and so and I have the big lamp over the bathroom on, and so I said, "Let's take a shower." And the shower was, I had nozzles every which way. It was like a car wash, and I had this amazing soap, Dr. Bronner's to the 10th power, and I sudsed her all up, and she's wearing her undies, and and then and I have this hose like it's a wand, and it's I can adjust just with my thumb, like a real stream. Where are my stipples? And it also has a little thing at the front that I can hit, and it can either be like a spray or the stream, right? Anyway, so, I turn on all the sprays around us, and then I'm her loofah. I kind of just suds her up, and she's just unbelievably happy, fed, fucked, and ready to go into that bathtub. And so she gets in there. I said, "Honey, we're both now clean, but I want you to enjoy this bathtub." And she pushed her toes. "Oh, it's so hot. Just ease yourself in." It was like one of those gigantic things with the lion feet. I found that too in the abandoned building. Olga and I got that out of there, along with the fire department. And so, and that's a whole nother story. And so, you know, I take that little Wandy thing and I pleasure her with it. And that was like the beginning of our that's why she married me. My appliances. And so, I did that. And she just, I got tired of holding it. And she goes, I'll take it from here. You got something to do? That's it. I'll leave you at it. So I said, what kind of music do you want to listen to? She goes, jazz. So I put on some Coltrane, and I went upstairs, got dressed, started working on my little devices. And about 40 minutes later, she came back, the happiest girl, ready to go back up into the loft. But then she kind of, there was another rolly chair, and she kind of, she had my big robe on instead of the coat I put on her. And she comes up, so what are you doing? And I started explained the whole thing to her. And she wasn't like aghast or thought, oh, that was terrible. Because she was interested in the device itself, right? And she goes, it's almost like a camera. I said, camera? I said, you ever like this? I said, yeah, I take them apart all the time when they break. And I said, what? And she was the Albert Einstein of photography. I mean, she was an amazing. I have never met anyone like her in the darkroom. Never, not at all. Right? And at Asheville, I went to visit this woman who, what's her name? It's the photo magazine. Not F-Stop, but something like that, right? I forget it. I can't believe and she was the editor-in-chief, And she, when I told her that, years ago, I told her that, Donna and I were, she knew that Donna and I were, but I hadn't met her yet then, right? And anyway, last time I saw her, she dragged out Donna's latest book. And it was really fun because Donna was more like Ansel Adams, her photo style. She was all in on the developing. That's what she was really got off on in the darkroom. She was a darkroom girl, right? Taking the picture, she picked a few aesthetics she liked from art school. She went to the San Francisco Art Institute, got a BA in photography, got a master's in it too. And top of her class. And then, and in between, as she was going from bachelor's to master's, she was Annie Leibowitz's first assistant. Set everything up, did the lighting, and printed everything, right? So from that, she got a job at Rolling Stone, being head of their darkroom, right? So Don had some interesting pedigree. But she was Ansel Adams. She liked taking, Ansel Adams, Gary Winograd, and that woman who committed suicide, who took pictures of strange things, whatever her name was, I forget. It's ashamed to say I couldn't remember her name. But anyway, that was Donna's, when I knew her stylistic, right? When I saw Donna's latest book, it was kind of fun because it's like, man, this girl picked, because we had a photo studio for 6 years, right? It's called DNA, Donna and Al. Right? And whenever we showed our pictures, and we were pretty prolific in showing photos, we had shows at the Whitney, we had shows at like Columns, and at other galleries, right? And so, and we were a dynamic couple too, because it was me who had a presence, and Donna who had her own presence. I mean, she was, I'm about 6 foot. She's probably 5'6", right? 5'7", and she always wore what are those shoes that are black and white? Girl, it's like a uniform at girls' schools. I forgot what they call them. Anyway, and she always wore these amazing, cute outfits, right? That she would sew herself, right? So she had her own look, and she had really long, beautiful red hair, and these diamondy eyes, just the cutest face, and quite a stunning form, right? And so we made quite, because there's me, this, and she'd always be pretty pristine on how she looked, and we always came in as a couple. People would meet us as a couple, but as the party would go, we would kind of spread out, right? And we had we had business cards that we gave everyone. That was like one of my art forms, and um, but she loved the fact that I gave her a presence, a space, and I was always there to protect her. But I let her do her own thing. I never like hovered over her. I was never like trying to like keep her away. She could be with anybody she wanted because I knew that she was going home with me. I was not worrying about that, and I wasn't worrying about who I was going home because that's all. That girl was the only girl I was thinking of, her, right? And that's why I'm telling you that is that. So she was not the easiest person to live with. She had a lot of, and neither am I. Like I have my presence, and a lot of people find it annoying or etc. A lot of people find it endearing. A lot of people find it enthralling. Others are totally amazed. But a lot of people can be, he's always talking. And I don't always talk. Yes, as a griot, when I'm telling a story, yes. But out there in the average world, I'm mostly listening because that's what I've been trained to do, because you want to know something about somebody, you listen to what they say, right? Then after you listen to them for about 5-10 minutes, you ask a few interesting questions because you've just listened to them. So you have this, and this to ask, And they answer that. You get more input. You get to understand, and then you just keep doing that. That's what I did in the corporate world. That's what I did as a shrinky boy. That's what I did as an artist. Because you're making art for people. You want to know what they want, right? And same thing as an electrician. Same thing as a scholar, right? So that's my singular skill set, right? But by being a master at that, I then was able to master all these other skill sets that people would pay me for, right? So anyway, so we had a really great 6-7 years, right? And from the first time when I met her, at the subway, I said, "Boy, she's an interesting girl." But I got off the train, not thinking I'd ever see her again, and there she was. And once I saw her again, I said, "Okay, this girl's interested in me, obviously." And so, I took her on tour, bought her a piece of pizza, bought her black and white cookies, showed her exactly where I lived and how to find me, right? And Kirby was like my personal secretary. Even if I wasn't there, he would make sure to find everything out about that person and how I could get in touch, and et cetera, et cetera. So once I went up there and had that grilled cheese, and 40 minutes later, she's knocking on the door, and Kirby gives me the frisky. It was like catnip to Don. Um, I knew this girl. We're going to be together. It's pretty obvious. But I also knew that she had, she was a person with. I have no agenda. I don't know if you figured that out yet. If you're a long time parent, how many of you three have been watching this? Anyone have a comment on the, chat thing over here? There's three of you. Could say something. Let me say something. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. And thanks for coming aboard. Here we are at 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 3 seconds. I love it when it does that. And if you want to send something to my PayPal, I'd love it. And that's go to PayPal, and my email is the dudewake42@gmail. Dudewake42@gmail. All one thing, all lowercase. Dudewake42@gmail. Want to talk to me on the old email? Dudewake42@gmail. Right now, I get a lot of stuff on my email, and I don't always have the access to the internet like I do now, and so I don't always get right back to you. And I do get a lot of crap that I don't want to always, go through. So sometimes I can miss somebody. So if you send me something to the PayPal, I'll definitely see that and get back to you with a thank you. And since Thanksgiving, 4 people now have since Thanksgiving sent something on the PayPal, and I want to thank you very much. The PayPal is an interesting thing. It's a gift. It's not. You're not giving me money so I do this. I do this as service to all our relations. That's why I do this, right? And pretty much got nothing else to do. And I know by doing this, another little doorway will open to the next thing I have to do, or else I'll die. Meaning, a week and a half ago, I almost died again. I didn't come as close as I did on 2014, where I actually died a plate of spaghetti. But Thanksgiving, I had gone to a really nice family who were real Italian, and they made all those Italian things from my childhood, and I ate a lot of it. So I kind of really, and I didn't have any of my medicines with me for a week, so I kind of went off the wee of my blood sugar, as if I really checked out my blood sugar in the last few days. So, and when you're traveling around, it has. But I did bring my pharmacy with me. I have all my herbs and everything I need to level my blood sugar and my other things that are going on with me. But I'm in my 70s. And we a lot of people say that we are what our parents' DNA is. If your parents have diabetes or this or that, you'll get it too. No, not really. I mean, there is a motif of it, but that's all it is. If you live a lifestyle where you're going to go that way, you'll get it, right? If you believe you're going to get it, you're going to get it. But if you know, so I lived a very, what's the right, aesthetic life, 40 years, you know. And then at 40, I had businesses, I had employees, I was running around going to lunches with blah, blah, blah. And I just took it from there, from 40 to 68, I guess, 2014, maybe 64. Yes, 64. I did that, so 15 years of unbridled hedonism, right? When you work in the corporate world for desperate lawyers, that's unbridled hedonism. Now, but when I went up to the, and that's the seventh time I died. I've been shot twice, and a few things. And when I was younger, I was very close. I was always like right there to be an angel. Right. So when I was born, I died. When I was, I don't know, 2 or 3, I died. When I was in first grade, I was murdered by a Nazi nun. When I was 10, I died in a Catholic hospital. When I was 16, when I really smoked my first marijuana cigarette. I mean, I've been working in rock and roll for like 3 years up until then. And people, everyone around me, but I was busy. I didn't feel like smoking, right? And it made me cough, right? So I never really smoked it. And then I was at a place where I was hanging with a bunch of people, and this, it smelled really good. And I know it's not going to kill me. So, and the guy goes, no, you do it this way. Hold it in. You just do that. And then this big cloud came out, and he started coughing. He goes, Grandma says, you don't cough, you don't get off. Try that. So I did. And I keeled over dead. And I was just kind of dead. I left my body. And I was up on the top of the ceiling watching these. These guys thought I died. So they were trying to give me what they saw on television on a police thing, CPR. And all they did was break a rib. And like when they broke a rib, it was so painful. I went right back in my body. Oh, stop it! Take me to the hospital. So they did. And the guy, checked me out, and they took my blood, and they said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't even have a heart attack. I said, what do you mean? So what do you mean have a heart attack? It does things to your body that you'll never recover from, and it changes your blood. And that's how we really know you have had either cardiac arrest or a heart attack, or any pulmonary this or that, is through your blood test. I said, oh, good to know. You know, I was 16, didn't know that. I said, what about this broken rib here? You just took an X-ray of. I said, well, we're going to. You don't really have too much hair on your chest, but we are going to take all that off and then tape your chest. You keep your chest taped that way for the next week or so. Come back. We'll see how it's doing. And I said, what do you mean see how it's doing? Well, we put it there. We taped it up. Take an X-ray. If it looks good, we'll send you home. Not, we'll readjust it until it is good, and then we'll send you home. Come back in about 2 weeks. We'll take another X-ray. If it's not healing right, we'll break it and do it. What? And so that's when I use my conscious intent. Boy, that's anyway. Boy, 2 weeks later, I went back. So, oh, you're really good to go. Anyway, so I have my own essence of perception, and like I said, I got paid pretty good for being an itinerant scholar, looking at things that I didn't have the credentials to look at. But that's why I had the street cred. People said, "Well, this guy, he comes in and looks at a situation or a thing, and his opinion is way more insightful and closer to what we need than some moron scholastic who's just reading a textbook, right?" So that's how I got to go to Egypt the first time. Is that I was part of the Theosophical Society, and I went to and part of the U.S. Psychotronic Society, and part of the ISIS Foundation, and part of the BBI, Bureau of Behavioral Investigation. So I had a pretty good street cred, and so people would tell other people, I know this guy. He's pretty interesting. You should talk to him. And I would be invited to go look at things, and they pay the ticket and the whole Monty, and then give me a nice bonus. Right? So I did that for a long time, not as a job, but when an interesting, as I would say, a gig would come up, I would go do it. Right? So first time I went to Egypt was kind of on that nickel, and how many hours have I talked? 3.5. How much juice is left? Oh, recharge pretty good. So it's not going to kick out on me anytime soon. So we went to the Valley of the Kings, and there's this kind of town for the tourists. It's out in the middle of the desert, and we stayed in the Holiday Inn. And these guys, that's where I stayed. They went a little further to an undisclosed place, digging up shit that no one was talking about, and it wasn't in any kind of textbook or on anyone's radar. And they had a suite, right? And they got a billiard table brought in there. I don't know why, but I mean, I know why now, but it was up there. And so I was just, I thought it was so I could entertain myself, because I saw myself as a billiard player, because I used to live above a billiard hall, so I would play a good deal. And I was no way a professional, but I was, practice makes perfect. And I could because I could read people, I could do pretty good on, taking their money. Because I would shoot around and look like I had no idea what I'm doing. Want to play for money? Sure. Anyway, so I'm taking this Holiday Inn, and I'm, being there. And the head boss would come back with his bodyguard in their, almost militarized vehicle, and they drive into the Holiday Inn parking lot and come up to the suite, and he would stay there for 2 days. And he would have this big kind of locker that the bodyguard would drag up there, and it would be stuff in it. And he would put it out on we put the billiard balls away, and there's a big light up there, and he would put it on the billiard table. Say, one artifact at a time. and he would say, "Okay, so look at this, right? And I'm gonna go get a cocktail, or I'm gonna take a shower. Look at that, and I want you to write your first impressions, right? Down, right? And then and he gave me this very nice bound book that had totally no lines or nothing, a sketch pad kind of book, but I would write in it, and then I'd make drawings, and I would go into state and see things and write about that. And they'd come out and look at that, and we talk about it, and I would do it again. I do it 3 times, and I do the conscious intent. I do the intent I am, and he would go good. And he'd actually give me no real feedback, and we'd look at I would do maybe in the 2 or 3 days that he'd be there, maybe 10 items, right? So not one right after another, but and we'd have nice meals, but we'd never leave the Holiday Inn, right? And the guard stayed in another room, right? And so and he and the guard, you know, they would he had some place, I don't know where he put that shit, but the guard would take that box away and put it someplace in an undisclosed safe place, and then they would leave in the semi-military vehicle out to wherever the frick they were. Anyway, the artifacts they were bringing up were basically very high, super duper, way advanced, way ahead of whatever humans had, right? And they all kind of were elements of a device that I would call a Stargate, a doorway, right? A window, right? Other dimensions, other times, you name it, right? So now those are kind of, when I call myself an itinerant scholar, those are the kind of gigs I would have. And not artifacts all the time, but people. I used to do for lawyers. I would do what I call those things when you're deposed, right? And so and not in criminal things, but more corporate things. And yeah, and I mean, they would be criminal. Some of them were criminal, but not like you know violent. It would be crimes of economic crimes. Stealing information, stealing money, that kind of stuff. And this person would be deposed, and his lawyer would be there, and how we would do it was the lawyers who they knew as the lawyers, the opposing lawyers, would come in and sit down, and they would expect those lawyers to depose this guy. But after 15, 20 minutes, I'm kind of okay, and I'd walk in looking like a homeless guy, and they would leave a space, with a nice chair. They were sitting in fair chairs, but I'd be in the really nice, cushy leather chair, and I would come in, sit down like the king, and I had already been, informed on everything that's going on, and and all the questions they wanted to ask, and then I would write them out how I was going to ask them, and then they would look at it and they put it in their little folder, and I would sit down and they would slide the folder all the information over to me, and I would open it up and not even look at it because I already read everything and wrote everything, and then start deposing them. And first I said, "Put up your hand. Let me read your palm." What? And their lawyers, "What is he doing?" And the guy who would be the ombudsman or the judge or whoever would say, "Hold up your hand." So I would read the palm, and I wouldn't say anything unless I knew it would influence them to be scared or tell the truth or whatever, right? So I would do that. So that was my little thing of itinerant scholarship. And the other thing I did, I would go to universities and work on projects with them, right? Social science projects, political science projects, science projects. What I was really good was, so there'd be a team, right? And they'd be at a point where they'd bring me in, where they were at a point of like being at loggerheads, right? And one part of the team wanted to do this, the other part of the team wanted to do this, right? They had no kind of common ground. I'd come in, listen to them all, and start negotiating. And then I would talk in strategies, not so much you're right, you're wrong, but strategies, right, to understand. So that was my process, right? So, for a good 25 years, I did that in all different shades, right? And still doing electric work, still being an artist, still doing community activism. And that's kind of what I liked, right? And I got paid for pretty much everything. And so I never had a need of capital or anything. And these folks took me around and showed me really interesting, fun things. And, I was young enough to take advantage of all of that. So as I gotten older and moved slower, and then, I got into the hedonist thing and I did that for almost 10 years. And then I died. And then it took me 7 years to crawl out of that. I used to weigh 240 pounds. Now I'm down to 110. Here, look at this. This isn't fat so much, but skin, all of that 240 pounds. You can lose the fat, but it's hard to get rid of the skin. And this is, I can, if I really, so I have a new sweetie, right? She's a librarian. And the first time she took a look at me without clothes on, and we were in the shower, and when I'm standing up, it's because I look thin standing up. But if I don't have clothes on, and I have kind of close fitting clothes, so it kind of holds the skin in. But she looked at me and she goes, "What are those?" And I said, "Oh, those are my flippers." And she goes, "Flippers?" I said, "Yeah, I'm part seal." And she's just like, well, this lady is a librarian. Not only that, she's a historian. Not only that, she's an archivalist, and she's like the head, right? In a big organizational thing. And I just met her in the supermarket where I was sitting in the place where you eat your sandwich, and I was reading these people's palms, and I said something to this group of this family, and it was like so. She was like eating some soup and or drinking milk, or she was something white, but she did a spit take, and she was in a suit, a really fancy suit, and she had her hair in a bun, and she had the librarian glasses, and she took a spit and just started laughing hysterically, and the people were like somewhat annoyed or embarrassed. And they thanked me. Said that was really great. We really appreciate it. This was the highlight of our vacation. Bye out there, and so it's just her and I left, and that's how we met. So we talked and talked, and she said, "Well, I got to go to a meeting, but how often are you here?" I said, "Well, this is like my office. I'm here like at least 2 or 3 times a week, pretty much every Monday and Wednesday, pretty much one or the other day. So if you have lunch here often, yeah, just come Monday and Wednesday, and you'll find me. And I'm here like between noon and 3, right? So, and that's where I do a lot of my um, YouTubes. It's my elevator music office. That's what I call it. My office of elevator music, however I say it. Anyway, so since spring of this or last year, we've been tweeting, and she loves it because she goes, "I really, really, really like you in that you're a really smart guy, and yet you don't have to prove it. Um, you let me lead every conversation, and you just make interesting comments about everything that we talk about, and it gets me like, never thought about that." And the stories you tell, I could listen for hours, and I do. And yet you don't pressure me to like move in or to be my boyfriend or any of that. You just love you light up every time I show up, and I love that the most. And how she's got into it, so she lives in a like you know she's had this place forever, and it's a teeny because it's just her. She doesn't have anybody in her life except her cats. There's 6 or 7 cats, and they are very catty, right? And I went to visit her place once, and they all kind of she goes, "No one ever." I sat on the couch, And these cats just kind of walked up to me, and a couple like rubbed against my leg, and I kind of rubbed their little ear a little bit. When she said she had cats, I went and got like you know some cat yummies, had them in my pocket, and just started feeding them. And they, oh, I like this guy. And so they, half of them just went over to their little beds and went to sleep. The other half played with thread over there. She goes, it's pretty amazing. Normally, no one ever comes to visit. And if anyone does, they just attack them. They do tag team ripping them apart. So that's why I never invite anybody here. But I just wanted to see their reaction to you. I said, okay. They seem to react pretty good. She goes, boy, do they ever. All right. She goes, that's another plus. But you probably won't come back here again. I said, what? I said, well, what? Look at this place. What are we gonna do here? It's all full of cat. I can see you going, no. So I don't. I'll figure it out. And how she figured it out was next time she came to visit. So she loved visiting me at the thing, but she liked. She wanted a little more physical thing. And so she realized, I said, so where do you live? Let's see. I said, well, okay. So I gave her the directions on how to find me. And normally no one can. No one. Even if people with, global positioning can't even find me, right? Came right to me like that. Only 2 other people in the last 20 years have been able to do that, right? So everyone else, I either, have to meet them someplace and take them there, or they kind of get close and start screaming, and I go drive and find them. Anyway, she came right to it. And so it's on a Saturday. She showed up around noon. She goes, let's go over to this other town. They got a lot of great stuff there. I said, oh yeah, I know that town. Let's go there. So we did. And they have a really nice old, top shelf hotel. Top. Really great restaurant, great bar, a nice little disco in the basement, indoor swimming pool with a jacuzzi, and they have a couple of rooms with jacuzzis. Right? I told her how much I love jacuzzis. Anyway, so we drive into town. She takes me to a nice, interesting restaurant, German restaurant, and I love German food. And there aren't too many German restaurants in Tennessee. And so we have a nice dinner there. Then we go to this place that's a bar that has, like a bar band that's dance. It's a danceable bar band. And so, she's a dancer, right? And I'm a dancer, And so we dance the night away. And it's getting pretty late, It's about 1:00, and we still have 40 miles to go to get to at least my place. And I said, so I'm glad I'm not driving. She said, well, we're not driving too far. And that's when she had already checked in. She read the key. We went up there. She filled up the jacuzzi. She had some booze booze and nibblies she had put away in their little kitchen they had there in the suite. And so that's pretty much what we do. We don't do it every. And she, she knows I, live like a millionaire on $400. So that's on her nickel. So I'm her, her pool boy. That's what I am. And that's the other, so since my second wife, and then I had 2 more, committed relationships, but didn't get married or take vows or anything. But I lived with some, 2 other people. And before I met Don, I lived with 3 other people, right? And so I'm a very committed guy on that level, right? But those 2, basically, again, they were enamored with me and loved the fact that I, didn't ask anything from them, but did everything for them, took care of them. And one of them thought I was. And then she kind of goes, you're the best guy I've ever been with, but you're nice to everybody. I never see you get. I said, observe. She goes, and other than that, you if I ask you questions about other relationships, you tell me freely, but you don't talk about it. Right? Most guys talk about all the women in their life like there's some kind of conquest. You, you don't talk about that. And and your two wives, especially your second one who died. I mean, I can't get past that. She's like in your heart, and you know. I said I don't mention her name. I don't. When I'm with you, that's who I'm with. Nobody else. Nobody else is in my mind. She goes, yeah, I know that too, and that's all of this is just pissing me off. And she gave me that one. It's not you, it's me. One. And I said, so you want to break up? She goes, no, I just wanted to get that off my chest. And then she progressively got more getting things off her chest, and it ended in the middle of a snowstorm that we almost died in a blizzard. And because anyway, I won't even go into that. But you can go to look at other shows and see that story. And the other one that was in my second relationship, that's even more complicated. But that took about a year and a half, um, and I was just, I mean, she was a brilliant, she was a concert oboist, right? She played the oboe, not the oboe, the cello. Oboe is this. Cello, string girl, right? Guitar, banjo, anything with strings. She could play piano, and that was her main gig. And her second main gig was Sports Illustrated model, right? And so, and she loved me because I had a really nice place, and she would, whenever she was in town, she would come and stay in my place, and it was her place. That's no one else. I didn't ever have anybody at my place other than her in that period because I was committed to her. Even though she flew around the world and played the cello here and there all over the world and went like this all over the world. And so that year and a half, maybe every month, 2 weeks, she was someplace else. And she loved the fact that man, I was it, right? And she didn't, and whatever she did out there, not a problem. But she knew at home, I wasn't skirting around, right? She knew this because she was quite, pretty much every woman I've ever been with has been, I not, very intuitive. Let's say that, right? And so Don's the only psychic one I've ever that I'd say, yep, you're psychic, because her grandma was a crone, so Don was a crone. And that's what you look at her photographs. She once she got hanging out with me, and she's got the textbook of her degrees out of her head of taking pictures. She started being her, right? And so anyway, that that so that was my last. The traveling girl was my last. So by that time I was in my 40s, and I had left New York. So New York was no longer, and I was, New York was the thing that actually gave me all these amazing opportunities, right? But from New York to Ithaca, right? And I was research assistant at Cornell, and that I was there for 3 years. And that too, big college like that, in Ithaca College also there, and some really interesting political things went on in Ithaca. They actually seceded from the Union and legally did it, and actually did it for 3 years. It was kind of fun. And the guy who planned it out was my next door neighbor, and he had polio, so he was around in a wheelchair. He didn't, he didn't. His legs didn't work. Pretty much 80% of his body didn't work. His arms kind of worked enough to use an electric wheelchair, right, and to type on a keyboard. So this thing occurred in Ithaca, where the beautiful place, the rolling hills, 3 counties, Finger Lakes, and federal government decided to put a nuclear waste dump there, and we fought it, and we fought it successfully to the point. And this guy's a lawyer; he was everything, and he realized the best thing that the three counties, could do was secede from the union. Then they couldn't put the nuclear power plant in. And I said that was Grandfather David of the Iroquois Nations' little idea. So he strategically did it, right? So if you were to go look up Ithaca bucks, that would be a good way to go into, Google, what are Ithaca bucks? Tell me about Ithaca bucks. Why did that happen? That was the money that we put together. Anyway, so after I left Ithaca, I went to Virginia and was all over Virginia, and had a place in still a town called Bedford, a little town called Lynchburg, and a little town called Roanoke, and one up near College Park, Maryland. And I kind of bounced around to do different things in all those guys, right? And what would happen, it's where I first started to have what I would call my affairs to remember, right? So I'd be at one of these places, at a conference or working on something or doing something, and I went to an interesting woman, and we would spark, and I always let the woman spark first. I'm very cordial, I'm very nice, I'm very attentive, I'm very talkative, I'm very entertaining, all the above. But that's like what I do here to you, I kind of do to the world, right? But if a girl sparks up, then I kind of, and then I say a few things, and then if we go up for the races, there we go. And then, very attentive, right there. There's nobody else, right? When I'm intimate, I'm not thinking about somebody else. I'm just thinking about that person, right? So it's usually very positive for the other person, right? I like that. Because people know if you're fucking around. That's why I never fucked around. I knew that right off the bat. So, I always, in my early days, all my relationships were with way older people because I was hanging out with way older people. All my circle of things was way older people. But anyway, once I started doing that, and usually I'd be someplace for more than a day. I'd be there for at least a week or a month or maybe two. And usually that person was also there for more than a day. And so we would have a real relationship, not just, fling. I wasn't into flings. And so, because I want the whole body, the whole person, the whole everything, the whole enchilada. And so, from about 50-ish on, I had these. And so I would have these amazing affairs to remember. And then after some time, we'd split. And that was also part of the both, me and the other person liked that. Because they had another life to get back to. Well, I'm a letter writer, so I would write letters and an email I kind of got to figure out. And what would happen was often we would end up doing something else where we would, oh, you're going to that meeting? Oh, I'll be there. Oh, you're going to be at that school doing, oh, I'm going to be nearby. And so these affairs to remember would be like not just that one little week or two or month or whatever, but we would kind of roll into, and we'd stay really good friends with benefits. And the benefits was we'd have this nice little interesting interlude that would last. So pretty much the rest of my life, last 20 something years, 30 years, I've had that. I've had about 6 of those, and they've all been amazing. So this librarian is my latest, and she likes, she doesn't like. We don't have a schedule. In summertime, we had a lot of time, and but once fall came, think we've seen each other twice since September. That's fine. Each time there isn't anything lacking. There is no space. There is no waning. None of that. So, it's what it is. And when I get back, if it picks up, that is fine. If it doesn't, we'll still be good friends. I've emailed her a number of times, on my trips. And she watches the old YouTube, not like, cover to cover, but I told her how to watch. I said, just kind of zip through the shows. And when the bloop, 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 bloop stops at one, hit that one, put your little finger down on the red line and just go along. And when you see the little box with my face and it's and if I make a funny, if there's any point that that might be interesting. I mean, that's a good way all of you could watch this show. So anyway, I'm starting to get tired. It's almost 1:30. It's time to go to bed. So I hope you enjoyed it. This has been almost 4 hours, probably one of the longer ones I've done in a while. I will see you guys later. My fatigue is, and I'm just rambling now. So you guys stay well. I love you all. You stay well. Like I said, you want to throw anything on my PayPal, I would truly enjoy it. Especially on the Bob, Living in the woods, you don't spend much money. On the road, you can. Love you guys.